My best friend is as indifferent as a chrysanthemum, a white lotus so pure and unsullied in this apocalyptic world. The food I'd painstakingly gathered, before I could even take a bite, she casually gave away to several men who'd wanted to kill me. She said it was just some food, and that one should be kind and generous. I saved my best friend from ill-intentioned men countless times, warning her, in the apocalypse, men are more terrifying than mutated creatures. She dismissed my words, saying that humans should unite, and even repeated my warnings verbatim to those men. Later, I was set up by these men and severely injured. My best friend, relying on her seemingly non-competitive and charitable demeanor, managed to marry the leader of the base. She clearly had medicine at hand, yet refused to save me. Catherine is always so competitive and has a strong will to live. Medicine is precious, so it's better to save it for those who need it more. When I opened my eyes again, I was holding food. Seeing my best friend reaching out her hand, I deliberately avoided it. In this life, I want to see if she can live long enough to become the base leader's wife without my help. 1. In the extremely hot weather of the apocalypse, with a sweltering 60-degree temperature, I felt as if I was about to be roasted alive. My skin was cracked, my lips parched, and it felt like a fire was burning in my throat. After much difficulty, I reached the cave, only to find my best friend, June, distributing the water I'd found among several strange men. She stood at the cave entrance, took a sip of the clear water, and then spat it out. Even in the apocalypse, June still insisted on washing up. While I often went without water to drink, she wiped the water from her lips. "You're back." As she spoke, she reached out to take the food from me, but I sidestepped her. I couldn't believe I had been reborn. In my previous life, I had protected June with all my might, prioritizing her when it came to the food, water, and medicine I found. She gave away my things, earning a good reputation. With her beautiful looks, she caught the eye of the base leader, and they got married. But when I was on the verge of death, she refused to give me medicine. She said I could pull through and that the medicine should be given to those who needed it more. This incident earned June unprecedented support and praise, while I died without treatment. Seeing that I didn't hand over all the food to her as usual, June frowned, looking displeased. "Catherine, what's wrong with you?" I ignored her. My throat was too dry to speak, so I strode forward. I grabbed the remaining water on the table and drank it all down along with the food I'd brought. Since the apocalypse began, this was the first time I didn't feel hungry or thirsty, and I finally felt alive again. How wonderful. What kind of life had I been living before? 3 men stood up and surrounded me. "That water was reserved for Miss Tang. Who do you think you are to drink it? Are you looking for death?" I scoffed, took out the dagger from my body. The blood on it was still wet, and the sharp blade made the men step back repeatedly. "This is the water I found. What right do you have to drink it? If you want to die, just say so, and I'll send you on your way." June came over and tried to pull me back. "Catherine, put it down. Girls shouldn't be so violent. It's not nice." She lectured me during peaceful times but hid behind me and ordered me to charge into danger when we were in trouble. This was my so-called indifferent as a chrysanthemum best friend. She was dirtier than the chrysanthemum itself. In my previous life, when there was no water and June had given away the food to those 3 men, she had comforted me with a smile, saying that as a girl, I had a small appetite and it was okay to skip a meal without food and water. I was weak and felt terrible all over, but I didn't even have the energy to force a smile in response. I was about to be taught a lesson by those 3 well-fed men who claimed they were doing it for June's sake. One of them carved the words "ugly" and "cheap" on my face. Throughout the whole process, June didn't say a word in my defense. She only stepped in to stop them when one of the men was about to slit my throat. Afterward, she said that a little food and water weren't worth getting worked up over and that one should be kind and generous. She gained 3 spare tire, while I was left with a permanent scar on my face. In fact, if I didn't let her, June couldn't have pulled me at all. My anger flared up, and the 3 men exchanged glances before putting down their weapons. "We'll let it go for Miss Tang's sake. We won't bother with you." It was clear they backed down because they knew they couldn't beat me. How hypocritical. After the men left, June looked me up and down. Seeing that I really didn't have any extra food, she opened her mouth and tentatively asked, "Catherine, when are you going to look for food again?" I yawned comfortably. "In a couple of days. Thanks to June, I now have a strong ability to endure hunger." June's expression kept changing. Even in the apocalypse, her skin remained fair and moist. This was the result of never having to go out to look for food and get sunburned. And by insisting on washing up every day, even her lips were red and plump. She clearly didn't lack water. In this life, I won't support her anymore. I want to see how this pure, indifferent, and kind white lotus can continue to bloom. 2. In the middle of the night, I was sound asleep when I was kicked awake several times. "Sorry, Catherine, I'm just not used to not eating. I can't sleep." In the dark, I scoffed softly, pretending not to understand her hint. "You're a girl with a small appetite. It's okay to skip a meal, you'll get used to it after a while. I heard June's breathing beside me suddenly become heavy. She was angry. So what? Before, June always suggested that I eat less, saying it was hard to find food in the apocalypse. Her words implied that I was taking more than my share of food. According to her, if I ate one meal, it was as if I was starving two people to death, but I was out every day. Sometimes only having one meal a day or even skipping meals. June, on the other hand, stayed at home and had 3 meals on time every day. She was so double standard yet still managed to maintain her indifferent as a chrysanthemum act. It was quite a talent. Catherine, do you remember the past? You were my personal bodyguard and swore to protect me for life. My family ran a security company, and June was a pampered young lady with 7 older brothers. With the love of her parents and other elders, she was the apple of everyone's eye. Her family had a long-term cooperation with mine. One day, when June visited our company, she saw me imitating the company's bodyguards and practicing boxing out of curiosity. I was 6 years old at that time, and because of that boxing practice, I was unfortunately chosen by June. Since then, boxing became a compulsory course in my life. My father even arranged for adults to spar with me. If I didn't practice hard, I would just get beaten up, and to punish me, he wouldn't even give me medicine for my injuries. After I mastered it, I became June's personal bodyguard. From then on, she became the center of my world. June knew how to win people over, although she usually put on airs. She would always call me her best friend after I protected or helped her. The title of best friend became my reward, replacing my salary. It seemed that I could only make a living under June. After years of PUA, even though both the Tang family and my family were gone in the apocalypse, I still protected June. It wasn't until I died once that I finally woke up. I slapped my head hard. What a fool I was. Catherine, be quiet and get some rest. Heh, when the young lady sleeps, the whole world has to say goodnight. I turned my head to look at June beside me. Sleep well. Your good days are numbered. From now on, every day will be a living hell. 3. The next day, I still didn't go out to look for food. Without water and food, the glamorous June wilted as quickly as a flower lacking water. Having never gone hungry since she was a child, she was on the verge of collapse, her face contorted, but whenever I looked at her, she would quickly regain her indifferent expression. She could be called the master of face changing in the apocalypse, after just half a day. She couldn't hold on anymore. Catherine, I think the temperature has dropped a bit. Why don't you go look for food now? Try to find more so we don't have to go out for the next few days. I looked at June and vaguely agreed. I was indeed a little hungry. When I went out, June was unusually attentive to me, even seeing me off to the cave entrance. I wandered around outside, found some water and food, and after eating and drinking my fill, I headed back. When I was almost home, I saw June standing at the cave entrance, looking around anxiously. When she saw me approaching, she even ran over to greet me. Catherine, you're back. Her eyes immediately fell on my hands and backpack. At first, she looked shocked, and after confirming there was nothing, I could almost feel her spirit shattering. Was today not a good day? It doesn't matter. June tried her best to maintain her image, but her voice was already trembling. In less than a day, this person who had always been aloof, focusing only on the spiritual and ignoring the material, was about to cry because of a few bites of food. I smiled brightly. Thank you, June. I actually found some food for you, but on the way back, I met some children, so I gave it all to them. I told them to thank you because it was originally your food, and they asked me to bring their gratitude back to you. I tilted my head. Are you happy, June? Some people survived because of you. Are you already full? How about going for a walk? Don't overeat. I had never approved of June's habit of giving away food before, but she said the spiritual world was equally important. She was more satisfied when someone could live better because of her than when she ate food herself. Today, I decided to give her a big satisfaction. June stumbled, and I quickly stepped to the left to avoid her. She fell to the ground and then jumped up immediately because of the scorching, hot ground. I had never seen her move so nimbly. Her smile was the most fake I had ever seen. Yeah, you did the right thing. Although her words were words of approval, they were laced with gritted teeth. Can't stand it already. This is just the beginning. For June learned her lesson and started following me when I went out to look for food. I paid her no mind. This time, I heard that there was a food factory nearby. Before we even reached the entrance, we could hear a commotion inside, with people scrambling for food. June leaned against the entrance, exhausted, and frowned. Why are they fighting? Isn't it better to queue up in an orderly manner? I can help distribute the food. A young man on the outskirts of the crowd heard her and turned around. Who the hell are you? You think you're somebody? Yeah, cue your mother. Damn it. Put down that pack of cookies. As soon as the grumpy uncle finished speaking, he threw a punch, and the two started fighting. I quickly joined the fray to grab food. With my rich experience, I moved through the crowd with ease and could even spare a glance to observe June. At first, she looked down on the scene, disapproving. Seeing that no one paid attention to her, she tried to step in and join the crowd, but without experience and with little strength, she was immediately pushed out. I sneered and stopped paying attention to her. Suddenly, a scream rang out from the crowd, "There's blood." Everyone knew that in this apocalypse, where medicine was in short supply, bleeding and getting injured meant almost certain death. Even during their usual scuffles, people would just punch each other a few times and wouldn't seriously hurt anyone. I saw June next to the injured woman, and her eyes were evasive. I had a bad feeling, pretending to trip. A kind-hearted woman immediately caught me. I smiled and gave the woman a pack of small bread. The woman warmly took my hand and led me over to see what was going on. The woman was lying on the ground, clutching her left waist. Her black clothes were soaked in blood. A pool of blood spread out beneath her. When I saw the familiar rusty knife next to the woman, I felt a chill run through my body. That was June's knife. The blade was chipped and rusty, but she always carried it with her like a treasure. I used to wonder why a young lady like her would like such a thing. Now I understood, with its jagged edge and rust. It was a deadly weapon. The man knelt beside the woman, crying, but there was nothing he could do. Not only was there no medicine, but there wasn't even any alcohol or clean bandages. The color was draining from the woman's face, but she struggled to raise her hand and pointed tremblingly to the left. June tried to back away, but the man caught her and grabbed her by the neck. "You stabbed my wife." At this moment, June didn't bother maintaining her "the innocent need not explain" act. She shook her head while crying and pointed at me. It wasn't me, it was her. Before I could react, seeing the man looking at me, the kind-hearted woman stepped forward and blocked me. She slapped June across the face. "You little bitch," framing others. "This girl has been with me the whole time. We were on the opposite side of you, you blind fool." The man looked back and forth, not knowing who to believe. Then someone shouted, "She's spitting up blood." We turned around to see that the woman on the ground had already closed her eyes forever. The man lay on top of the woman, wailing, but due to the lack of water, he shed few tears. His mournful cries echoed in the empty space, sounding heart-wrenching. A sense of sadness welled up in my heart. But June beside me said indifferently, "In this kind of environment, death is a relief." After that, she picked up a pack of bread she had grabbed and left quickly. I noticed a deep mark on the inside of her hand, with some rust-like stains. It was clear she had used a great deal of force. One pack of bread cost a life. This was how this noble white lotus defined life. 5. Because June had framed me, we hadn't spoken for several days. However, it was hard to find a cool cave. So we still lived together. These days, June had tried to find food on her own several times but failed every time. The man who had lost his wife took out his anger on June. Several times when June came back, she was not only hungry but also injured. Finally, she couldn't take it anymore and went to her 3 admirers. One day, I was taking a nap in the cave when I heard a woman sobbing outside. I went over and saw June looking up at the sky, with tears welling in her eyes but not falling. Kind-hearted people are always let down. This world is so hard. I noticed that after some time, June's skin was no longer fair and plump. Her once proud long hair now looked greasy and stuck to her scalp. Her lips were dry and covered in dead skin. Didn't she look in the mirror? With this appearance, she really couldn't live up to the image of a pure white lotus. Moreover, in this life, she had only given water to her 3 admirers and nothing else. Now that she was no longer as good-looking, she naturally didn't get the same obedient treatment from men as she did in her previous life, so after listening to her, the 3 men just perfunctorily agreed and quietly moved the food and water they had found behind their backs. They understood every hint June dropped, but they just ignored them. They agreed in words but took no action. Finally, June couldn't hold back anymore. "I'm a bit thirsty. I got carried away chatting with you. Which reminds me of the day I treated you to water in the cave. We also had a long talk then. After all this effort, after an entire afternoon, June got only a capful of water from a mineral water bottle. It wasn't even enough to moisten her lips. On this day, when I went out to look for food, I deliberately walked quickly to shake off June. Unexpectedly, there was a commotion behind me. When I took a closer look, June was actually standing with Gregory, the leader of the base who was her husband in the previous life. However, this time, Gregory looked displeased and full of disdain. Curious, I approached and heard people saying, "Is this woman crazy?" Exactly, her actions are so ridiculous that they shock my whole family. 6. June's actions also shocked me. After some inquiries in exchange for a piece of bread, I learned that when June met Gregory, she first pretended to trip and tried to throw herself into his arms, just like she did in the previous life. In the previous life, she maintained her beauty and made many good connections, and was well known for her good character. Even when she pretended to trip, it was considered an accident, which led to a beautiful marriage. But now, without her good looks and reputation, her pretend fall just made her seem like a delusional woman who was ugly but had high hopes. When one plan failed, June came up with an even more astonishing idea. Due to the climate, She heard that Gregory's group wanted to find a new place for the base. June suggested going to her family's old villa. Her exact words were that her family members were buried there, and it was a good location. Building a base required infrastructure construction and resistance against mutant animals that appeared from time to time. That is to say, there would definitely be excavation work, and digging up graves was inevitable. She sacrificed the peace of her whole family for a man. She appeared indifferent, but in fact, she was selfish. June also knew that this was extremely immoral, so she proposed taking me along and leaving the grave digging work to me because I was the one who buried them in the first place. More than a dozen members of the Tang family were all outstanding in their respective fields, but their deaths were rather absurd. When the apocalypse came and they were moving, June seemed unhappy and kept looking back. The sadness in her eyes was more obvious against her indifferent face. She didn't say anything after being asked several times, and finally said lightly, "I was thinking about those clothes and jewelry. They were all expressions of your love for me. It's a pity I can't take them with me. It's okay, don't worry about me. Safety is the most important thing." As soon as she said this, the family members disagreed, except for me. Everyone went back to get the things June mentioned, while I stayed behind to protect her. Unexpectedly, mutant animals entered the villa, and no one survived. I remember that after the mutant animals left, we went back to take a look. June only said 2 sentences. Looking at her precious clothes, she said, "Alas, they're all dirty." Looking at the scattered bodies of her family members, she said, "It's the irony of fate." June didn't care at all, afraid of danger. She was eager to leave. It was only because the Tang family had taken good care of me that I used a shovel to put their heads into the pits. As for the body fragments, it was impossible to tell them apart, so I just put some in each pit. June didn't say a word throughout the process. That was probably her true indifference. The Tang family's villa was at the foot of a mountain in the suburbs. It was easy to defend but difficult to attack. And it was indeed a good location, in the apocalypse. Having seen so much life and death, the others didn't avoid the matter either. They dug up the graves with me to build the base. Due to June's indifferent reaction to everything, the stinking skeletons that were dug up were casually piled aside, and they planned to bury them in another place when they had time. Unexpectedly, as soon as the basic defenses were completed, mutant animals came to attack. In the extremely hot weather, not only humans but also animals had a hard time surviving. Rarely seeing so much food, the animals outside attacked like crazy. June hid in the innermost part of the room. After ensuring her safety, she regained her calm expression. Pointing at the skeletons, she suggested, "We can throw these out." What a great idea. She was really sacrificing her own family. Did the Tang family kill and set fire in their previous life? Meeting June in this life, they had to die again even after death. Gregory rarely took a long look at June and acquiesced to this decision. Sure enough, after having meat to eat, even if it was rotten meat, the attack of the mutant animals was not as fierce. I looked back at June. Her expression was calm. Looking closely, there was even a hint of interest in her eyes. Looking at Gregory, who kept glancing at her, I understood, however. Is it possible that Gregory was just curious about what kind of reaction someone would have when watching their relative skeletons being fed to animals? June's brave decision made her shine in the base. They would surely be happy to know that they could save us. My relatives are already dead, and I don't care much about their remains, but I think they have played their greatest role. On my way back to rest, passing by Gregory's room, I heard his subordinate ask him what he thought of June. She lacks both in appearance and character. She's not even qualified to be a plaything. 7. Due to my outstanding performance in going out to find food and doing tasks, I caught Gregory's attention, and he focused more on me. Every time he talked to me, I could feel June's venomous gaze. Gregory wasn't infatuated. In the previous life, he married June mostly because of her good reputation. As the leader of the base, he needed a wife with high support to stabilize his position. In this life, June's behavior of throwing away her relatives' remains did attract a lot of attention. Although there were many people around June, most of them were just watching the fun. In the apocalypse, people's hearts had gradually become cold, and their relatives were the last soft spot. Gregory looked at me only because he appreciated my abilities. I was also deliberately showing off because I had my eye on the position of deputy leader. Power was much more attractive than men. One night, an emergency alarm sounded, and mutant animals came to attack again. There were few women in the base, and June and I lived close by, so we went down together, and June stayed by my side throughout. At night, it was the animals' domain, and this attack was more fierce than the last one. Due to the shortage of materials in the apocalypse, the defensive strength was limited, and soon the animals found a gap. Mutant animals were about to break in. Because of my rich combat experience outside, Gregory came to discuss strategies with me. I was fully focused on finding a way to survive and didn't notice what June was doing, but when the mutant animals broke through the defense line and came towards us, I felt a strange gust of wind behind me and quickly dodged to the side. Then I saw June with a ferocious expression, pushing forward with all her might, but Gregory was standing next to me. Gregory didn't react in time and was pushed off balance by June. He lost his footing and was about to be injured by the mutant animals. I pulled Gregory over and deliberately adjusted the angle to ensure that when Gregory got up, he would bump into June. June wasn't as lucky as us. She just happened to run into the mutant animals and was bitten on the leg. Her screams were shrill. This was probably the most agitated she had ever been in her life, but everyone was busy fighting, and no one paid attention to her. Just as the mutant animals were about to bite her neck, I stepped in. It would be too easy for her to die like this. This time, many people were seriously injured. Gregory and I were among the few who escaped unharmed, but June was the most severely injured. A piece of flesh was torn from her leg, and there was a risk of infection. Lying in bed, she didn't cry, and the sadness in her eyes was almost tangible. "It's okay, I'll get through it if I endure it." Even at this moment, she was still maintaining her false persona. Gregory hadn't forgotten that June pushed him and didn't have a good tone. "Well, then you'll be treated last." June's face distorted for a moment, and there was a hint of doubt in her eyes. She was probably wondering why her act of being indifferent and non-competitive didn't work anymore. I smiled and said, "June is the kindest. She usually shares her food with others, let alone medicine. Medicine is so precious, so of course, it should be given to those who need it more. June can endure it." Gregory turned and left. When I was about to leave, June grabbed me. Her face showed a variety of emotions. "Catherine, help me." I pulled my hand away, not wanting to get infected with the mutant animals virus. "You're supposed to be indifferent, not care about anything, and not compete." "What? Does June want to fight for the medicine?" June's face turned red and then white, constantly changing. She couldn't bring herself to say the affirmative words. As I was about to go out, I heard a voice from behind. "Yes." Her words were firm and decisive. "If I can't even take care of myself, how can I help others better? Such a strong woman. Then you can go to those people you've helped, the ones you've given food and water to, and see who will give you the medicine." A look of venom flashed across June's face. She probably knew very well what kind of people those were, which further confirmed her expectations. "Catherine, I really need the medicine. Even if I have to steal it, I will." There's no such thing as a truly indifferent person. She's actually more selfish than anyone else. When her own interests are at stake, she competes more fiercely than anyone. Unfortunately, she asked the wrong person, not to mention that medicine is in short supply now. And June was bitten because she tried to harm others but ended up hurting herself. In the previous life, when I was the only one injured in the base, and it was a man-made injury that didn't require special medicine to resist the virus, June still refused to save me. At that time, I only focused on June, and even the contributions I made were given away by her to gain favor. Others didn't see my value to the base at all, so they didn't save me. I died in excruciating pain. When I was dying, I heard her say, "Catherine is competitive and selfish." This can be considered a lesson, yes. I learned the lesson of misjudging people at the cost of my life. Just as I was about to step out of the room, there was a thud behind me. June actually knelt on the ground. Her wound opened and started bleeding again due to the sudden exertion. "Please, help me. I can repay you." June didn't finish her sentence. Even at this moment, she didn't want to make empty promises. She wanted something for nothing and was selfish to the core. I left straight away. In the apocalypse, resources were scarce, and the base didn't support useless people. If June didn't use medicine for her injured leg, there was a risk of infection, and she might end up having her leg amputated or becoming disabled. She would only end up being expelled from the base. But the next day, June's leg was already treated and bandaged. I noticed that the atmosphere between her and the ugliest male doctor in the base was a bit strange. Several times when I passed by, I saw the male doctor groping June. June had a coquettish expression on her face, which was fake but very convincing. It was deadly attractive to men. Not many people noticed that June had received treatment. After the 2 attacks, I asked Gregory to improve the base's defense system. At first, no one believed it and thought it was a waste of energy to work in such hot weather, but because of my strength, they didn't dare to say anything openly. However, when the mutant animals attacked the base again and they saw the stable and offensive capable defense system, everyone was convinced. Even those troublesome men who hurt me in the previous life now bowed and scraped when they saw me. In the apocalypse, the strong were respected, compared with the good reputation that June gained by sacrificing a large amount of supplies in the previous life. Mine was more solid. But I wasn't going to let those men who hurt me off the hook. Unexpectedly, the opportunity came so quickly. One day, when we went out on a mission, Gregory's trusted subordinate was seriously injured while saving him. As soon as Gregory carried the man into the base, he started shouting for a doctor, but strangely, no one came out. With a gloomy face, he went straight to the infirmary and kicked open the door. Inside, a pornographic scene was unfolding. I raised my eyebrows at June. Even with a serious leg injury, she could still lift her legs so high. She was really dedicated. When the male doctor saw Gregory's murderous expression, he was so scared that he lost his nerve. He put on his pants tremblingly and stuttered for a long time without saying anything coherent. June's expression was blank for a moment. She probably found it hard to accept this cruel reality. Her most embarrassing side had been seen by Gregory and most of the people in the base. Everyone was focused on treating the injured. And I saw June's face change several times as she stood in the corner. Finally, her expression settled on the innocent need not explain. What a fool. After the wound was sutured and bandaged properly, Gregory asked everyone to leave, leaving only the four of us in the room, neglecting your duties and indulging in pleasure. If you're so free, why don't you leave the base? The outside world is much more spacious. Hearing Gregory's words, the male doctor immediately knelt on the ground tremblingly. No, she seduced me. I'm not lying. She wanted more medicine from me again. It turned out that last time, June had given herself to the male doctor for the medicine for her injured leg. This time, she wanted anesthetic and virus agents extracted from mutant animals. June explained that she was weak and wanted to use them for self-defense when going out on missions. Gregory didn't listen to her explanation and simply decided to keep the two of them together. This way, June wouldn't bother him anymore. But as soon as he said this, the male doctor was the first to object. I don't want her. This isn't her first time. God knows how many men have been with her. She's so dirty. June looked as if she was about to collapse. She opened her mouth to explain, her face full of shame, anger, and sadness, as if she had been wrongly accused. Only I, who grew up with her, knew that June's reaction meant the male doctor was telling the truth. Before the apocalypse, June was indeed a pure goddess, leading men on but keeping her distance, like a lofty moon that made those men unable to resist her. After the apocalypse, I remembered the strange smell in the cave and the reactions of those men several times when I came back. It turned out that in the previous life, there was not only the favor of food and water but also physical rewards. No wonder those men, even when they didn't lack food and water in the base, were still loyal to June. There was this reason as well. That night, the male doctor knocked on my door. Be careful of June. She asked me for medicine not for self-defense but to harm someone. In the whole base, you're probably the one she wants to get rid of the most. Looking at the male doctor's serious expression, I knew the information he gave was reliable. But he came to tell me just to use me as a pawn to get rid of June. Coincidentally, I had the same idea, and I had already chosen the right person. 9. There was a rare happy event in the base, but for the two people involved, the male doctor only showed disgust and belittlement towards June, while June put on an aggrieved look as if she didn't want to say anything. As time passed, the matter gradually faded away. I found that June had a new target. Actually, it was understandable. If she hadn't been short of medicine for her leg injury, she would never have chosen an ugly doctor who could only treat illnesses. This new target was also an old acquaintance of mine from the previous life, those men who hurt me, because of their equally low moral character and conscience, as well as their almost full-scale brutality. They were well known in the base. The leader of this group had even reached a management position in the base. And the management team would regularly meet with Gregory to discuss matters and report on their work. Through her repeated acts of giving herself, June had become the mistress of the leader. The two were inseparable in the base, and the small-time leader even brought June with him when reporting work. I sat in the secret compartment and peeked out through the brass awl in the corner. June sat on the small-time leader's lap, caressing his body gently. From time to time, she fed him water. Even in such a situation, when the small-time leader wasn't paying attention, she would turn around and look at Gregory with eyes full of pleading and affection. She constantly adjusted the angle of her face to ensure that Gregory saw her most beautiful side. Having worked with Gregory for so long, I've come to understand his habits. He's career-oriented but also somewhat male-chauvinistic and extremely concerned about his reputation. There are few beautiful women in the apocalypse. But in this life, June has stepped on all his landmines. The wind outside the window blew through June from behind. Gently lifting her hair, she politely offered Gregory water, but he refused. The disdain in his eyes clearly showed that he really looked down on June, and he didn't forget to glance in my direction, indicating that he wouldn't fall for her tricks. But he really underestimated women, especially those who were on the verge of falling into the abyss. The next second, the smile froze on the small-time leader's face, his body went limp, and he slumped on the sofa, motionless. Gregory tried to stand up but felt dizzy. I touched the gas mask on my face, just in case, and as expected, my bet paid off. June was carrying poison this time, and since she was upwind, Gregory, who was downwind, inhaled it all. Gregory still had some self-control. He reached for the dagger on the coffee table, intending to let some blood to regain his clarity. I wanted to stop him but then thought better of it. It wasn't until the last moment that he could truly learn his lesson. Sure enough, after the first cut, Gregory's body swayed even more violently. Idiot. There could have been medicine smeared on the dagger. Once it came into contact with the wound, the medicine entered the bloodstream and took effect even faster. Gregory gripped the chair tightly with one hand. and the veins on his arm bulged. "You're ruthless," he gritted his teeth, and blood oozed from the corner of his mouth due to the force. He took out a syringe from his pocket and, with his last bit of strength, pounced on June and injected it into her body. So ruthless, using up the entire syringe. In fact, just 1/3 of it would have been enough to ruin a person's life. All 3 people in the room collapsed. I stretched. The mission was accomplished. On the day the male doctor came to me, I only replied with one sentence: "Don't break someone's heart. Like is like, dislike is dislike. Being ambiguous is not good." The male doctor's rejection accelerated June's search for a new partner. From the moment she started focusing on the small-time leader, I guessed what June was up to. I told Gregory about it and gave him a syringe. It was given to me by a mad scientist I saved before. It was extracted from heat mutant animals. A little bit could enhance pleasure. 1/3 of it would make a person unable to live without those things for the rest of their life. As for what would happen if the whole syringe was used, he didn't know, but now he could look forward to it. Her husband from the previous life had personally pushed June into hell. I wonder if she liked this gift. 10. When June woke up, she immediately crawled towards the small-time leader's bed. The effect was astonishing. Later, she went from one man to another, afraid that June was still poisonous. Gregory ordered that no other men should approach her except for the small group, or they would be expelled from the base. Just as I expected, it was better to keep a potential threat like June under close watch, and watching her struggle in hell was much more satisfying than killing her directly. At first, there was joy on June's face, but later, there was only numbness and pain, yet she couldn't stop doing those things. The men in the small group became visibly emaciated due to overexertion. Seeing her in such a miserable state, I felt relieved. I spent more time with Gregory, learning how to manage the base and accumulating experience. Gregory smiled and said that after some more training, he would make me the deputy base leader. I smiled but neither accepted nor refused. One day, just as I was about to go out with Gregory, a figure rushed towards me. June was disheveled, with her hair in a mess. Holding a syringe that was probably filled with blood, she tried to stab me with it. I had developed PTSD from June by now and easily dodged. When she saw Gregory beside me, June looked like a demon from hell. "You should die too. Why didn't you marry me? If you had married me, I wouldn't be like this." Oh, she was reborn. It's good that she was reborn. It would make it easier for me to get revenge precisely. With new and old grudges combined, June wouldn't let Gregory go. Gregory finally got impatient and knocked her out, but unexpectedly, June still had a bit of consciousness left and scratched Gregory's hand with the bloody needle. The whole base was on high alert. Just then, a sentry at the gate reported that there was a strange person outside who wanted some food in exchange for a row of strange syringes. What should they do? This behavior seemed so familiar. It was the mad scientist. As expected of a professional. It was found out that there was actually no poison left in June's blood. Just to be safe, Gregory only needed to use an antiviral agent, and June's life wasn't in danger. She just had to keep serving men, but she would suffer great pain. Everything in excess would backfire. The side effects of the entire syringe were inflicted on that small group. When Gregory sent people to check, none of the men in the small group survived. The walls of the room were covered with hideous bloodstains. The clear marks on the iron door showed that they had suffered greatly before death. The bodies of these people had decayed until only skeletons were left. The mad scientist said that their bodies started to decay while they were still alive. That kind of pain was worse than the most severe torture, and when the pain reached its peak, one couldn't even scream. No wonder we didn't notice. June became a public outlet for the men in the base. Her screams became entertainment for the men. It was said that sometimes she had to serve more than a dozen men a day. Most of the time, I didn't come across her, until one day, I saw June in a wheelchair. She couldn't use her legs now and could only get around in a wheelchair. Looking at June, who had a rosy complexion, I teased, "You seem to be doing well." A look of venom flashed across June's face, but then she regained her indifferent expression. It's not easy for those men to work outside. Mere leaving their desires is a reward from the base to them. The reborn June was already in the mud, but she still tried to maintain her act of being indifferent and aloof. Her high-sounding excuses were disgusting, just like a piece of shit trying to pass itself off as a delicious dish. The people in the base had long known her true face. This false mask only trapped herself, having accumulated enough experience. I was about to embark on a new journey. The mad scientist insisted on following me, so I let him. Gregory tried to persuade me to stay, but I refused. Being second in command is not as good as being the boss. I was going to build my own base too. In the future, there were vast horizons waiting. In this life, I would surely live a wonderful life on my own terms. Story 2. I don't know how much time had passed. When I opened my eyes again, I found myself lying in bed unharmed, while Lulu was lying on his back carefree beside me. I actually was reborn, too. I was reborn 10 days before the outbreak of the apocalyptic zombie virus. To be honest, I don't want to experience being bitten by zombies ever again. This time, I decided to take advantage of the opportunity of being reborn, find a safe place to stockpile goods and food, and survive until the end of the apocalypse. The plan was perfect, but I didn't have any money. I was really poor. My parents passed away unexpectedly when I was in college. I managed to finish college with a student loan. After graduation, I worked for an MCN company, earning a monthly salary of 5,000 yuan. After paying the rent and repaying the loan, there was hardly anything left. As everyone knows, a golden retriever is a real glutton. Since I got one, it has made my already poor family even worse off. What? You ask why I keep a golden retriever even though I'm so poor? Because I'm also a human being and I need companionship, and golden retrievers are so great. A dog has so many tricks up its sleeve. Waging a battle of wits with it every day can help prevent Alzheimer's. After thinking it over, the only wealthy person I knew was my ex-boyfriend, Milo. Fortunately, when we broke up, I adhered to the principle of leaving some leeway for future encounters. So I didn't delete his contact information. The phone call was quickly connected, and I used a coquettish voice to act cute. Milo. There was a long silence on the other end of the phone, and then he said, Everly, did you take the wrong medicine? I couldn't help rolling my eyes. After all these years, Milo was still the same, such a handsome guy, but it's a pity he has such a sharp tongue. He was my senior in college. Despite his mean personality, countless girls were still infatuated with him. But I was the lucky one who managed to stand out among many competitors and win his heart. We had a period of being deeply in love, however, until something happened to my family. I broke up with him and took a year off from school. After that, we never saw each other again. In fact, as an ex-boyfriend, he had never done anything to wrong me. Thinking of the past, on an impulse, I blurted out, Milo, a global viral disaster will break out in 10 days. The apocalypse will come. And zombies will sweep across the entire earth. Do you believe me? As soon as I said it, I regretted it. The end of the world. I was afraid that Milo would surely mock me. I believe you. I'll come to pick you up. Surprisingly, he didn't retort me and believed me so easily. I was stunned. 3. When I saw Milo again, I was still struck by his good looks. His skin was pale, his eyes were as black as ink, his lips were as red as blood, and his temperament was gloomy. Just like a medieval vampire walking out of an European and American movie, Milo quietly pulled down his baseball cap a little to avoid my gaze. I realized that my eyes were a bit too eager. I gave a haha laugh and got down to business. Milo, could you lend me 2 million yuan? You can spend my money as you like. Milo took out a black card. My eyes lit up, but unexpectedly, he added, but you have to move in and live with me, dude. This makes it hard for me not to think too much. Could it be that you want to rekindle our old relationship? He gave me a disdainful look, looking very noble and cold. You said you were reborn, so you have an inherent advantage. I have money. Only by cooperating with each other can we have the greatest chance of surviving. Well, he really is a businessman, making a reasonable and convincing argument. I quickly moved into Milo's 5,000 square meter villa with Lulu, and this, bullying the weak and fearing the strong, dog, Lulu, was arrogant and unruly in front of me, but when he saw Milo, he became as obedient as a mouse seeing a cat. He stopped destroying things and barking randomly, as if he had become a completely different dog. Milo's villa was located in the villa area in the west of the city, in the suburbs with a low occupancy rate. There was also a metro supermarket 5 kilometers away. The geographical location was very advantageous. Once the zombie virus broke out, there would be few people here, and it wouldn't become a severely affected area. After moving in, Milo showed me around the whole villa. The villa had 7 floors in total, 3 above ground and 4 underground. The 3 floors above ground had ordinary home furnishings. The first floor was the living room, the second floor was the bedrooms, and the third floor was the study. To enter the underground area from the ground, one needed to trigger a very hidden switch and enter the fingerprint password. Then the heavy secret room door would open, and it was very difficult for ordinary people to find, and the 4 floors underground were a whole new world. The first underground floor was the living area, with a sunken living room, a wine cellar, 2 kitchens, 6 large bedrooms with different styles. Each bedroom had an independent bathroom, toilet, and cloakroom. The second underground floor was the entertainment area, including a gym, an esports room, a multimedia room, a bowling alley, a sauna room, a library, a heated swimming pool, a golf simulation venue, and a large monitoring room. The third underground floor had been transformed into a large supermarket and a freezer. It was still empty now. Once it was filled, it would be enough for us to eat for a lifetime. There was also a small hospital equipped with medical instruments and equipment capable of performing minor surgeries. The fourth underground floor was the breeding area, divided into an aquatic product breeding area and a crop growth area. Under the irradiation of ultraviolet lamps, fruits and vegetables could be planted even without sunlight. All the doors and windows of the whole villa were made of special materials, the walls were reinforced, and the bulletproof glass couldn't be broken even by a missile. The whole house was soundproof, with solar panels, a pure water treatment system, a high-tech intelligence system, and surveillance cameras covering every corner inside and outside the house without any blind spots. After visiting as a poor person, I was overjoyed. This villa was not only impregnable but also extremely luxurious, and there was no room for any further renovation or upgrade. I asked excitedly, "How did you come up with the idea of decorating the house like this?" Milo lazily explained, "I've just been playing a zombie mobile game recently and got interested in building houses. So I simply renovated the villa." I clapped like a seal. It doesn't matter if you don't have money in the world, but you must hold on to a powerful backer. As long as I stick with Milo, in the apocalypse, I won't just be barely surviving but enjoying life. For, in the apocalypse, people's hearts are unpredictable. For safety's sake, we plan to purchase all the supplies by ourselves. In Milo's garage, there were either luxurious sports cars or SUVs that looked like armored vehicles, which were ostentatious and not suitable for transporting goods at all, so we first bought a small van like those used by cargo delivery services, and then headed straight for Metro. I pointed in the direction of the instant food area and gave orders. Our main goal today is to buy instant food and canned goods. Instant food has a long shelf life, is convenient to eat, and easy to store. It's simply a great companion in the apocalypse, although there was a kitchen in the villa and we could cook. But who would do it? I could cook, but would Milo dare to eat what I made? It was ridiculous. Even Lulu wouldn't eat my cooking, and for a wealthy young master like Milo who had never done any housework, there was no need to ask. He definitely couldn't cook. Unexpectedly, Milo immediately proved me wrong. He took out a bunch of certificates from his pocket and spread them out like spring festival couplets. He gave me a haughty look and said, "Who says I can't cook?" I took a closer look and saw certificates such as a Chinese pastry chef certificate, a Chinese cuisine chef certificate, a Western pastry chef certificate, a Western cuisine chef certificate, and a Michelin chef certificate. There were all kinds of them. I was silent for 2 seconds and then asked, "Did your company go bankrupt? Have you switched to making fake certificates?" Milo was amused by me and walked straight towards the fresh meat area. I chased after him, following closely and chattering nonstop. "Come on, young master, why did you get so many chef certificates? Do you still want to work as a part-time chef and outcompete us?" Milo suddenly stopped. I couldn't stop in time and bumped into his back. Damn, it was so hard. I touched my reddened nose, with tears in my eyes, and said angrily in a nasal voice, "Can't you say something when you stop? My nose is almost broken. Can you afford to compensate for my original, well-shaped nose?" He seemed a bit helpless, let out a sigh, took away my hand covering my nose, and leaned closer to check. "Where did you get hit? Let me see." His handsome face suddenly magnified in front of my eyes, and a clean and fresh breath rushed towards me. I stared blankly at his eyes. His eyes were dark and bright. When he looked at people expressionlessly, he was like a magnet, making people unable to resist being attracted. My heart skipped a beat, and my face turned red instantly. He looked at me and suddenly smiled with a glint in his eyes. He said something, out of the blue. "I don't want to be a chef, I want to raise pigs." Then he let go of me and went to the fresh meat area. I was stunned for a few seconds. I felt that he seemed to be scolding me, but I wasn't sure and needed to think about it further. There weren't many people in the instant food area, so I started shopping like crazy. 1,000 boxes of self-heating rice, 1,000 boxes of self-heating hot pot, 1,000 boxes of instant noodles in various flavors, 200 packs of snail rice noodles, 100 buckets of hot and sour noodles, 1,000 boxes of cookies, 1,000 packs of potato chips, 500 packs of sausages, 500 boxes of salt-baked eggs, 2,000 cans of various beef, braised pork, and luncheon meat canned goods, 500 bottles of Lao Gan Ma spicy sauce. After buying everything and checking out, the staff member from Metro who helped with the loading was a good-looking young man. He looked tall and thin but had great strength. While loading the goods, he asked me, sweating profusely, "Sister, what are you going to do with so many things?" As soon as I heard this address, I immediately got angry. "I'll give you another chance." "What should you call me?" He was startled by me. His eyes were bright and clear, and he looked at me pitifully. "Miss," I nodded, satisfied. To be reasonable, although there is only one character difference between sister and miss, the meanings are very different. Okay, after this incident, the young man didn't dare to say or ask anything more. He silently buried himself in loading the goods and left quickly after finishing. Milo hadn't come back yet. While waiting for him, I placed orders on JD.com and Pinduoduo for 500 bottles of goat's milk, 500 bags of dog food, 1,000 packs of freeze-dried staple food, and 2,000 cans of various meat products. Then I also bought a large number of chew sticks, dog snacks, toys, grooming tools, health products, and various medicines. After solving Lulu's survival problem, I began to wonder whether to take Lulu to the pet hospital to have him neutered and then get a little female dog. In this way, The two dogs could have a platonic spiritual love in the apocalypse. Just then, Milo came back after shopping. I casually asked for his opinion, but he strongly opposed it. Everly, can't you stop being so perverted? Me, perverted? I was dumbfounded and very speechless. Why are you so excited? People might think I'm going to neuter you if they don't know the situation. Milo was choked by my words and tactically changed the topic. Let's load the goods first. He bought 500 gene of beef, 500 gene of pork, 500 gene of mutton, as well as Australian Wagyu beef of grades M7, M8, and M9, and Japanese of 5 grade beef. It just filled the van completely. Looking at the full load of goods in the van, I felt a sense of harvest joy. At the age of 24, I swiped my ex-boyfriend's card and bought a van full of supplies in full. The future looked promising. 5. By the time we had carried all the things to the freezer and the storage supermarket and put them away, it was already late at night. I was so tired that I collapsed on the sofa like a dead fish. When I suggested opening 2 boxes of self-heating rice to eat, Milo looked disgusted. What? Do you want to experience the apocalyptic food in advance? That made sense. So I readily took out my phone. Then I'll order takeout. I'll go cook. I put down my phone and watched the Yen master leave with eager and adoring eyes. Lulu came out stealthily with a frisbee in his mouth. He kept nudging my hand with his wet nose, wanting me to play frisbee with him, but I was really tired. Seeing that I was indifferent, Lulu pounced on me, his fat body weighing more than 70 gene pressed on me, and I almost spat out blood. He looked at me defiantly, wrinkling his brows and biting his lower lip, as if saying, "Do I really have to look at you with disappointment?" There was no other way, so I had to take him to the large lawn in the yard to throw the frisbee. At first, Lulu would pick up the frisbee and bring it back, but later, he completely slacked off and ran freely, like a runaway foal, extremely happy. In the past, there was no chance for him to run. Big dogs were always looked down upon wherever they went. I was afraid of scaring people, so I always took him out to pee and poop at dawn and kept him on a leash all the time. Lulu and I had only moved in for less than 24 hours, but our lives were upgrading at a rocket-like speed. While I was sighing with emotion, the dinner was ready. When I entered the dining room, I saw that in just half an hour, Milo had actually prepared a rich dinner, including steak, pasta, cream of mushroom soup, vegetable salad, and Haagen-Dazs ice cream. I couldn't wait to sit down and cut a piece of steak to taste. The moment the delicious juice burst in my mouth, I was almost moved to tears. My road to a laid-back life was getting happier and happier. 9 days before the apocalypse, Milo went out to do some shopping alone in the van, and I stayed at home to receive and unpack the express deliveries. The supplies I bought for Lulu online were arriving one after another. After organizing the supplies, I remembered that in the last life, at the beginning of the apocalypse, the temperature suddenly dropped sharply and it became extremely cold. Half a month later, it became extremely hot, and the weather was very changeable. When it was extremely hot, there was still electricity at home, but the air conditioner was too noisy, so I only dared to turn on the fan and soak in water to cool down. When it was extremely cold, I had a lot of quilts at home, and Lulu had a thick coat of fur, so I could hug him for warmth. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to survive the first month, although Milo's villa was built like a fortress, and the underground power system was independent from the above-ground one, and the intelligence system could control the temperature. In theory, everything was foolproof, but I was a timid person and liked to be prepared for any eventuality. I immediately placed another order for a bunch of supplies to resist extremely cold weather: clothes, 100 sets each of windbreakers, windproof pants, fleece jackets and pants, down jackets, and quick-dry underwear, travel items, 100 sets each of high-top hiking boots, snow gaiters, snow goggles, waterproof and thermal gloves, socks, cold-proof hats, and small backpacks, camping gear, 20 sets each of -20-degree 1,000-gram down sleeping bags, moisture-proof pads, and tents, 100 pieces each of winter pajamas, summer pajamas, slippers, quilts, and 4-piece bedding sets. Then I also bought some miscellaneous items such as lip balms, sunscreens, headlamps, and thermal water cups. I bought dozens of each item. Although there were only 2 of us and 1 dog, in case of any unexpected situations, it would be better to be prepared. By the time I finished placing the orders, the express deliveries were almost all received. Looking at the room full of express boxes, I explained to the delivery uncle, "I just graduated and started an e-commerce business, so I'm stocking up on some goods." The delivery uncle looked honest and simple, with a dark complexion. When he heard me say this, he grinned. "Starting a business is good. You can make a lot of money by starting a business. My son also just graduated this year and is going to take the civil service examination." Looking at his smile, I thought of my father. When my mother just gave birth to me, he didn't like that I was a girl. After being educated by my mother in various ways, he went to the other extreme and always said that girls were better than boys and that girls could also bring honor to the family. He really wanted me to take the civil service examination. I was the first person in my family to graduate from a 985 university. During that time, he walked with his head held high when going out. I couldn't help but remind the uncle, this epidemic is quite unpredictable. Uncle, you'd better stock up on more food at home as a precaution. The uncle smiled and agreed. I don't know if he will stock up on goods when he goes back, but this is all I can do. I opened all the express boxes and sorted the items, then Milo came back. I counted the supplies he brought, 8,000 gene of rice, 2,000 gene of flour, 200 barrels of olive oil, 200 barrels of rapeseed oil, 4,000 cases of Evian mineral water, with 24 bottles in each case, 500 bottles of laundry detergent, 500 bottles of body wash, 500 bottles of shampoo, 500 sets of toothbrushes and toothpaste, 1,000 pieces of towels and bath towels, 300 bottles each of salt, vinegar, chicken essence, soy sauce, light soy sauce, sesame oil, cooking wine, and various spices, 1,000 cases of wet wipes and napkins. There were even 500 packs of sanitary napkins and tampons, 200 packs of brown sugar ginger tea. Menstrual pain during my period is my lifelong enemy. I rely on brown sugar ginger tea and painkillers to get through it. Milo was really thoughtful. I threw him a flirtatious look. Milo, come over and help unload the goods, the person said. 6. After unloading the goods, I found a secret room on the 4th underground floor and became curious immediately. When I visited before, Milo didn't introduce this place to me. Was there any secret? Milo couldn't stand my pestering and opened the door of the warehouse. It turned out to be an armory. There were all kinds of firearms hanging on the 4 walls, long and short ones. In the middle were displayed bullets and grenades, as well as some knives, axes, daggers, and other cold weapons. It felt like the armory in the movie Kingsman and looked very impressive. The weapons here are enough to rival a small army, Milo said casually, picked up a pistol and played with it casually. He disassembled and assembled the gun at a very fast speed. Judging from his movements, he was very skilled and professional. I suddenly realized that I actually didn't know him very well when we were dating back then. What he showed was just the tip of the iceberg of who he was. I felt a little disappointed for no reason. I forced a smile and asked, should I learn how to use a gun from you? In case of danger, I can also help. Milo lowered his eyes and looked at me indifferently. Do you want to learn? To be honest, I didn't. I was just a lazy person with no ambition. I was born under the red flag and grew up in peace, not to mention using a gun to kill zombies. I had never even killed a chicken. During the apocalypse, I only had a head-on confrontation with that zombie once. I still clearly remember the zombie's ferocious and oozing face, and its stinking wide-open mouth that was so close. If it wasn't to save Lulu, I wouldn't have had the courage to fight with it. You don't want to, right? Seeing my silence, he chuckled and rubbed my hair. Then don't learn. I'm here. These words made me want to cry. Since my parents passed away, I haven't felt the warmth of being protected by someone for a long time. I became energetic again and actively suggested, let's transform the yard, dig some deep pits and set up ambushes. In case zombies come, it can serve as the first line of defense. Milo shook his head. In the apocalypse, what we mainly need to guard against is not zombies, but people. The reason why I didn't transform the yard and the 3 floors above ground is that I don't want to be too conspicuous. Being too special makes us easy to be targeted. What he said seemed to make sense. So I gave up this idea. On the 8th day before the countdown, we went to several wholesale markets, 100 bags of various crop seeds, including Chinese cabbage, potato, tomato, eggplant, coriander, chili pepper, water spinach, cowpea, sweet potato, pumpkin, and wax gourd, 1,000 fry of various fish, including snakehead fish, bighead carp, catfish, and grass carp. We also bought several hundred gene of beef, mutton, chicken, and duck. Then we went to several large seafood markets and bought out all the swimming crabs, green crabs, bread crabs, king crabs, Mexican red lobsters, European blue lobsters, Australian lobsters, Boston lobsters, salmon, and mantis shrimps. Milo, I knelt on one knee, covered my chest with my right hand, and made a standard salute gesture like Hai Ching. You are my god, he sneered. He seemed to be disdainful, but I clearly saw the smile at the corner of his mouth and the pride in his eyes. 7. In the following days, we filled in the gaps and added some supplies in a hurry. The fish on the 4th underground floor had been raised, and some vegetable seeds had been planted. The freezers and the storage supermarket on the 3rd floor were almost full. The small hospital was also filled with various medicines, which could deal with common colds, fevers, bacterial infections, and external injuries such as gunshot and knife wounds. The entertainment area on the 2nd underground floor didn't need to be taken care of as it had been decorated well during the renovation. The living area on the 1st underground floor had all the necessary daily supplies. There was no need to buy daily clothes and shoes. Each cloakroom was full of big brands like Chanel, Louis Vuitton, and Prada. There were enough clothes for all seasons without repetition. All brand new with the tag still on, among the shoes, except for some high heels. Most of them were comfortable and lightweight sports shoes. The electricity, water supply, and garbage disposal had all been considered during the renovation. I didn't know what technology Milo used, but even if the whole city lost power and water, it wouldn't affect us. Lulu was a shedding monster. So I placed an order for 200 robotic vacuum cleaners and put one in each room of the living area. When one was broken, it could be replaced with a new one. Everything was ready, and there were only 2 days left before the apocalypse. I belatedly remembered something and asked Milo, "What about your parents? Do you want to pick them up?" Milo looked reluctant to talk about it. "My mother died during childbirth when she gave birth to me. My father is in City A. Don't worry, he has his own plans." On the last day of the countdown, the temperature dropped sharply and it started to snow. We didn't go anywhere and stayed at home playing ball with Lulu. This was a blizzard across the country, regardless of north or south. On the TV news, the reporters were shivering from the cold and talking about this abnormal weather phenomenon. Experts took turns giving their opinions and trying to soothe the public's emotions, but what they said was all useless nonsense. In the end, netizens were annoyed. The hashtag suggests that experts stop making random suggestions. Hashtag top the Weibo trending list. Through my observation in the last life, I found that zombies were afraid of sunlight and their movements would slow down a lot in the sunlight. At the beginning of the outbreak, the sharp drop in temperature also accelerated the spread of the zombies. Milo and I looked at each other and neither of us chose to post a reminder online. We were not saviors. Just trying to keep ourselves alive required all our efforts. That night, I didn't sleep soundly. Around 6 o'clock in the morning, I vaguely heard some noise outside and woke up with a start. Lulu was sleeping in my bedroom. When he saw me sit up, he also stood up suddenly and came over to rub against me, looking at me with his big confused eyes. When I walked out of the bedroom, Milo was standing outside looking at me. "Did you hear it too?" I nodded. As a reborn person, I could finally play a role. It's not zombies. In the last life, the zombies spread from the subway during the morning rush hour. At around 7 o'clock in the morning, a man was detected with a high fever when going through the security check, and then he suddenly fainted. When he woke up, he started to bite passengers indiscriminately. Everyone was so scared that they fled in all directions, and the city fell in just one day. It was only 6 o'clock now, so it couldn't be zombies. We went out together to check. When we got outside, we heard clearly that it was the barking of a little dog. Finally, in the corner of the yard, we found a little stray dog shivering from the cold. It was probably 2 or 3 months old, with sparse fur, skinny, and a pair of big and bright eyes looking at me pitifully. We decided to adopt it. Mainly I decided to adopt it, and Milo had no objection. We settled the little dog down. On the TV news, there was an urgent broadcast of a vicious stabbing incident in the subway. The host was saying in front of the camera that this kind of creature had no reason, could come back to life after death, and was calling on everyone to stay at home and keep the door closed. On Weibo and Douyin, the topic of the zombie attack had gone viral. The image of the male zombie in the subway station covered in blood and pouncing on people to bite was being widely spread. Milo and I locked the doors and windows, drew the thick curtains, erased the living traces on the 3 floors above ground, and hid in the underground with Lulu and the little stray dog. The apocalypse had really arrived. 8. Lulu didn't reject the little stray dog at all and was quite interested in it. After giving the little stray dog a bath, deworming it, and feeding it some goat's milk, I isolated and locked it up. It was a little male dog. Its mental state was not bad, and there were no external injuries. However, due to limited conditions, I couldn't give it a further examination. Whether it could survive or not depended on its luck. Since it looked like a wrinkled Momo when I picked it up, I named it Momo. Momo's arrival diverted my attention and reduced my apocalypse anxiety. Milo frowned and watched me busy for a long time, then asked a classic apocalypse question. "If they were in danger, would you save them?" I asked back. "Then if I were in danger, would you leave me alone? Do you think I'm that kind of person in your heart?" Milo gave me a fierce look. I pretended to cry. "Woohoo, Milo, you're so kind. I've decided that from now on, you're my real father." Milo refused immediately. "Thank you, but no need. If it weren't for Lulu, I would have died a long time ago in the last life and couldn't have lasted that long." In the last life, later on, all the food at home was gone. I was a stubborn and cowardly person. I would rather starve to death at home than go out and confront the zombies. Once I fainted from hunger and was vaguely licked awake by Lulu. When I opened my eyes, there was actually a pile of food beside me, probably because I suddenly fainted and Lulu was worried. He opened the door and went out to find food by himself. It was exactly noon, and the sun was shining brightly. The zombies were all dormant and their mobility was slow, thanks to the genes of a golden retriever. He actually found a lot of food. Lulu's IQ was often erratic, but it was really beyond my expectation that he could get supplies. Later, I became a bit bolder and would take him out to search for supplies together, and we managed to get through each time without any major trouble, until the final accident happened. Have you seen Uncle Shinting's new movie Moon Man? That kangaroo, Gunzi, is just like my Lulu. After Gongzi was left behind, if Duguyu went back to save him, he would definitely die. Why do you think he went back to save him? I babbled on for a long time, and finally came to a conclusion. I guess you've never raised a small animal, right? It's normal that you can't empathize. Milo smiled with a forced expression. I've raised a pig. Does that count as a small animal? Probably. It does. I got up too early in the morning and was sleepy again. After taking a nap, it was already afternoon. While eating potato chips, I went online to check the situation. The zombie virus was spreading rapidly. Weibo was full of distress messages and videos of zombies attacking people. The major media were still trying their best to speak out, telling everyone not to panic and waiting for the government's rescue. They did rescue people, but it was useless. The spread of this virus was too terrifying, since the villa was in a relatively remote location. There were still no signs of zombies. After eating the last potato chip, I turned off my phone and bounced off to find Milo for food. I heard that he made king crab, and I was so happy. On the third day of the zombie outbreak, the number of people posting on the internet decreased exponentially. There were not many living people left, or maybe everyone had become more cautious and no longer posted casually. Milo was quite busy every day. He was busy working out in the gym, swimming in the pool, monitoring the situation outside, checking the growth of the vegetables, and cooking 3 meals a day. And every day, I would stay in the esports room, the multimedia room, wash the dishes, and command the robotic vacuum cleaners to clean the floor. I couldn't do anything else because I didn't know how. On the 4th day of the zombie outbreak, from the monitoring room, we saw that the villa area had also fallen. There were a small number of zombies wandering around. They were very sensitive to sound and moved very quickly. On the 7th day of the zombie outbreak, Momo's isolation period ended and he was released from prison. After my careful care for a few days, his fur became a little shinier. This little guy was incredibly obedient. Every day, he would come to me for cuddles, lick my palm, and lie in my arms dependently, looking at me with his big eyes. Lulu jumped up and down around him, trying to force him to play, but he didn't pay much attention. When Lulu really annoyed him, he would hide in my arms and whimper. That's right, he was a bit scheming, but I couldn't resist it. My heart melted. I used to not understand why men all liked girls with a bit of a scheming side, and even Milo couldn't escape this. No, I could understand a little bit. 9. On the 10th day of the zombie outbreak, I found that I had gained a little weight. After a moment of reflection, I put on a sports bra and yoga pants and appeared in the gym. My original intention was to work out, but I stunned Milo. He was lying on an incline bench, lifting dumbbells. His wet black hair fell on his forehead, his clothes were soaked with sweat, and his 8-pack abs were faintly visible. He exuded an explosive hormonal charm. When he noticed me staring, he gave me a half smile and glanced at me with a seductive look. Like a demon, I couldn't help swallowing and ran away shamefully. That night, I had a dream. He pinned me down on the sofa. His black eyes were deep, and I almost drowned in his eyes. His slender fingers gently stroked the back of my neck, tender and hot. I was powerless to resist and felt like I was about to melt. When I woke up, I was scared by this dream. After that, I started to avoid Milo a bit. Unfortunately, he caught me, frowning. He questioned me, "What's wrong with you these days?" "Nothing. It's okay," I stammered and lowered my head, not daring to look at him. "Look at me when you're talking." Milo forcefully lifted my chin. I was forced to look at his handsome face. Somehow, my mind went blank, and I suddenly kissed his lips. After kissing, I was stunned, and so was Milo. My mind was like fireworks bursting, incredibly gorgeous. I could still feel the touch of his lips on mine, and I couldn't help licking my lips. Milo's eyes changed, and he stared at me aggressively, like looking at some easily obtainable prey. I was scared and turned to run, but he pulled me back into his arms. Just like in the dream, his slender fingers held the back of my neck, and he pressed me against the wall and kissed me hard. He was like a hungry wolf, and my face turned red. I almost suffocated. After that, we seemed to enter an ambiguous period. We were both pulling and neither of us was willing to admit defeat. We hadn't played this love game for a few days when a group of unexpected guests pried open the door of the villa and occupied the upper floors of the villa. Among this group of people was a woman I didn't expect, Milo's first love, Clementine. When I saw it from the surveillance video, I was really afraid that Milo would rush out. There were 6 men and 1 woman in that group. They were all muscular men with thick muscles, and each of them was like the Korean action star Ma Dong-suk. They were carrying guns and looked like they were from the underworld before the apocalypse. And they were not to be trifled with. One of them, with a cold and stern appearance, sharp eyebrows and eyes, and regular facial features, unfortunately, had a scar on his left face, looking very menacing. He seemed to be the leader of this group. The group of people checked every corner of the villa separately. They didn't find anything unusual or any food, so they took out their own food and ate it. Then they left one person on guard and the others went to rest. Clementine followed the scarred man, Harrison, into the bedroom together. The others saw this and exchanged a meaningful look, showing a lecherous smile. Milo enlarged the surveillance of that bedroom. Clementine was pushed onto the bed by Harrison. She was extremely delicate, with her long black hair spreading out like a waterfall. She was breathtakingly beautiful, trembling uncontrollably and with tears in her eyes, looking so pitiful. It seemed that they were about to enter into some restricted level scene. We were all adults. And I wasn't really bothered by action scenes since I had seen them before, but I was worried that Milo would feel awkward. I couldn't help but sneak a glance at him. He seemed calm and indifferent, and I couldn't tell what he was thinking. At this moment, Clementine spoke again. "Harrison, I've already told you that this place is safe. Please spare me." So the scarred man's name was Harrison. He approached Clementine quietly, and she was so frightened that she let out a series of screams. "If you want a woman, I know someone who is 10,000 times more beautiful than me. Her name is Everly, and I know where she lives. I can take you to find her." I was so angry. This vicious and despicable woman. 10. Slap. A clear and loud slap was heard from the surveillance. Clementine covered her face, looking at Harrison in disbelief. "How could you hit me?" I sneered. She still thought of herself as a young lady, expecting everyone to give her some respect. Harrison grabbed her collar roughly. "Don't play tricks on me. If you don't want to be slept with, then think carefully about what you can do. I don't keep useless people." After saying that, he left. Clementine seemed to be stunned. Huddled on the bed without moving, Milo was still staring at the screen, and I was annoyed. "What? Feeling sorry for her? Sorry for what?" he said coldly. "She deserves it." I was satisfied with this answer. Half a month after the zombie outbreak, the whole city was in ruins, and there were zombies wandering everywhere on the streets, but all the chaos outside had nothing to do with me. I firmly believed that surviving was the key. The Chinese cabbage planted on the 4th underground floor was growing vigorously. At noon, I had fresh Chinese cabbage, stir-fried beef with chili peppers, cola chicken wings, and seaweed and pork bone soup. There were vegetables and meat, a balanced diet, much better than the takeout I used to eat before the apocalypse. Lulu was also living a better life than in the last life, although there was no lawn in the underground villa. The space was large enough. He and Momo chased each other around, getting enough exercise throughout the day. After lunch, I went to the monitoring room again. Goodness, this group of people actually caught more than a dozen zombies and tied them up with iron chains in the yard of the villa, creating a zombie defense wall. Harrison pulled Clementine into the yard and asked, "Well, have you thought it through?" The zombies smelled the smell of a living person on Clementine and went crazy, trying to tear her apart. They let out a series of beastly roars but were held back by the iron chains, only struggling in vain. The accident happened in an instant. One of the zombies actually broke free from the iron chain and pounced on Clementine ferociously. She was too scared to move. So close, Harrison swung his knife and chopped off the zombie's head in one stroke. The zombie blood splattered all over the two of them. Clementine's psychological defense completely collapsed. She said in a trembling voice, I've thought it through, but I only want to be your woman." "That won't do," Harrison said with a playful smile, touching Clementine's face. "I have so many brothers. Come on, Harrison, don't you want me to belong only to you?" Clementine leaned into Harrison's arms and coquettishly, her pale face showing a vicious light in her eyes. "Didn't I tell you? I have a good sister named Everly. We can bring her here for the other brothers, can't we?" "What if she doesn't listen?" "If she doesn't obey, just throw her to the zombies." Okay, I'll listen to you." Harrison was aroused by her rubbing and half-heartedly agreed. The two scoundrels went into the bedroom arm in arm. I knew that Harrison and the others couldn't possibly find me, but I was still so angry that my whole body was shaking. It was easy to imagine how miserable my fate would be if I really fell into their hands. Clementine was still as cruel as ever, trying to kill me several times. Suddenly, Milo stood up abruptly and walked straight out. I came to my senses and quickly grabbed him. "Hey, where are you going?" His whole body muscles were tense, his eyes were cold, and there was a hint of killing intent. "I'm going to kill them." I was stunned. He didn't seem to be joking. I quickly soothed him. "Milo, forget it. It's not necessary." Milo looked at me steadily, not saying a word. I forced myself to continue persuading. "Look, I'm fine now. There's no need to." Before I could finish, he pulled me into his arms and hugged me tightly, as if he wanted to crush me into his bones. He was holding me so tightly that his hands were even trembling slightly. At that moment, all my anger dissipated. I hugged him back tightly. 11. With the enemy in the open and us in the dark, I started to slack off again. I no longer went to the monitoring room every day, and my daily routine returned to what it was at the beginning of the apocalypse. I became a happy, lazy person again. I woke up naturally every day. First, I would go to the 4th underground floor to look at the fish and then the vegetables. The greenery was so pleasing to the eye. When I came back from the vegetable field, a delicious breakfast was already waiting for me. After eating and drinking my fill, I saw Lulu lying on the sofa sleeping. I couldn't resist the urge to play with my dog. I pounced on him like a tiger, hugging his golden head and kneading it. I also picked up his stinky paw and smelled it. It had a popcorn smell, which was really addictive. Lulu looked completely resigned to his fate. Milo frowned at me. What kind of hobby is this? I gave him a disdainful look. You don't understand. Little Momo came over, rubbed against my hand, and let out a whimper. I was so charmed that I immediately abandoned Lulu, picked up little Momo, and kissed his little black nose wildly while kissing him. I also talked to him in a coquettish voice. Ah, Mommy's little Momo. You're so cute. Mommy loves you so much. Do you love Mommy? Lulu let out a sigh, looking relieved. Milo frowned even deeper, glanced at Momo, and said 3 words, little schemer. It was really quite funny. When I was bored, I would also go to the monitoring room to take a look. I had to admit that this group of people still had some abilities. With zombies running amok, they still went out to collect supplies every day and had quite a good harvest. Clementine adapted quickly to her new identity. She had the temperament of a vengeful young lady. She wanted to take revenge on all the subordinates who had bullied her before. There was a subordinate named Silas in their team. He was Harrison's right-hand man and was very dissatisfied with Clementine. Clementine didn't take him seriously either, and the two of them were always at odds. Harrison was very ambitious. He wasn't satisfied with the current situation. He called his subordinates together for a meeting ambitiously. In the next few days, we'll clear the zombies in the villa area and then use the villa area as a stronghold to establish a base. Once the base is established, we can recruit more people, expand our team, and become the king in the apocalypse. This Harrison had clearly read a lot of male protagonist apocalypse novels. He had a whole set of ideas. Silas raised an objection. I think we shouldn't be too impulsive. The current supplies are enough for us to last for 10 days or half a month. Although there aren't many zombies in the villa area, it's still very dangerous to clear them. Other teams are eyeing us, and we need to preserve our strength. Being refuted by his subordinate, Harrison looked unhappy. Clementine observed the situation and immediately jumped out to sneer. If you're afraid, just say so. Don't make it sound so nice. Silas was a hot-tempered person. He kicked over the tea table in front of him, his veins bulging, and raised his fist to shout, "You bitch." Say that again. Clementine threw herself into Harrison's arms delicately. Harrison, look at him, he's trying to rebel. Enough, Harrison roared. Do as I say. Silas was so angry that his head was smoking, but he gritted his teeth and endured it. But before the base could be established, Harrison was carried back by his subordinates, covered in blood. He had been shot and was in a high fever and coma. When Clementine got the news, her face turned pale instantly. 12. Silas temporarily replaced Harrison as the leader of the team. The first thing he did after taking office was to order people to throw Clementine into the yard to be fed to the zombies. Clementine resisted desperately, shouting hysterically, "You can't treat me like this. I'm Harrison's woman. When Harrison wakes up, he won't let you go." The subordinates hesitated and looked at Silas. In the monitoring room, I also held my breath in front of the screen. This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for revenge, but Silas actually backed down. Lock her in the bedroom first. Is that all? Is that all he's got? I couldn't help but complain to Milo. Silas is so useless. He has good combat power. Milo sat in front of the screen calmly, commenting, "It's just that he's not very smart." He was indeed not very smart. Silas actually volunteered to lead the team himself, taking one other subordinate, to go to the hospital to find medicine for Harrison. As everyone knew, the hospital was a zombie stronghold, and one basically had to be prepared to never come back. Obviously, the other subordinates weren't ready for this and all lowered their heads to avoid his gaze. Silas was so angry that his face turned distorted. Staying in the villa isn't necessarily safe either. The team that attacked us today could come knocking on our door at any time. It turned out that when they went out to search for supplies this time, they encountered another team. Both sides refused to give in for the sake of the supplies, so they fought. That was when Harrison was shot and injured. In short, that team must be very powerful because as soon as Silas finished speaking, a subordinate immediately raised his hand and expressed his willingness to go to the hospital with him. The personnel were assigned, and Silas led the team to the hospital. The 3 people left in the villa, 2 were on guard, and 1 was responsible for watching over Clementine. For the time being, everything was calm. There was nothing interesting to watch next. It was all boring parts. I took the opportunity to take a nap. When I woke up, I found that Lulu and Momo were lying on either side of me, sleeping on their backs with their tongues sticking out. They were so cute that it made me smile involuntarily. Unlike the bloody chaos above the villa, it was really happy under the villa, and all of this was because of Milo. I suddenly had a pang of conscience and volunteered to cook a loving dinner for Milo. The ingredient I was best at using was eggs, so I made a whole egg feast, including fried rice with eggs, scrambled eggs with chili peppers, stir-fried eggs with meat, steamed minced meat with eggs, and egg soup. Milo was also very obliging and ate everything without changing his expression. I smiled and watched him finish eating, and said eagerly, "Is it really delicious? I'll make it for you again next time." Milo glanced at me. "Why did you suddenly want to cook?" "To repay you." I smiled sheepishly. "You've been so good to me. I'm here with my dog, and all my food, clothing, housing, And transportation are provided by you. He interrupted me calmly. There's no need. I was stunned and lowered my head in embarrassment. Then I heard his cold voice again. It's only natural to be good to my girlfriend. There's no need for repayment. I couldn't believe it and suddenly raised my head, staring blankly at him. Are you confessing to me? He had beautiful eyebrows and eyes, looking at me steadily. Suddenly, he smiled. Silly girl. This unexpected tenderness instantly touched my heart. I threw myself into his arms and clung to him like a piece of chewing gum, acting coquettishly. Milo, do you love me? I do. How much do you love me? He gently kissed my forehead and said in a low voice, more than you can imagine. I looked into his eyes, fascinated. His black eyes were like a lake, full of deep affection, and I somehow believed him. I stood on tiptoe and kissed his thin lips. He took the initiative, picked me up horizontally, and carried me towards the bedroom. 13. When I opened my eyes again, I saw Milo's smiling face. Seeing this face, all the events of last night immediately came to my mind. I felt a bit embarrassed. Good morning, he chuckled, his tone ambiguous. It's not early anymore. It's already noon the next day. I became annoyed and pushed him. Get out. I want to get up. Are you sure? Milo raised his eyebrows and slowly lifted the quilt to get out of bed. My eyes couldn't help but follow him, from his face to his Adam's apple, then to his abs, and finally to a certain indescribable part. But then he put on his pajamas. I felt a bit disappointed. Then I saw him looking at me with a half smile. Falling in love really makes you lose your head. I needed to go to the monitoring room to calm down. In the video, Clementine looked dejected and sat on the ground in a daze, the subordinate responsible for watching over her. A young man who looked like he was only about 20 years old at most, felt sorry for her and shared some of his food and water with her. Eat something. Clementine slowly looked at him and asked in a daze, as if sleepwalking, what will happen to me if Harrison doesn't wake up? The answer was obvious. She crawled and rolled over to the young man's feet, hugging his legs and begging, please save me. Silas will definitely not let me go. At this moment, the bedroom door was kicked open, and two bald men responsible for the villa's security came in. Seeing this scene, they laughed. Lucky you. Balda kicked Clementine flying with a kick and cursed, whore, Harrison hasn't even died yet, and you're already seducing our sixth brother. Clementine lay on the ground, unable to get up for a long time, crying bitterly. Baldby spat hard. Stop wailing like you're at a funeral. So unlucky. After dealing with Clementine, the two bald men smiled and said to the young man, your brother Silas hasn't come back all night. Something might have happened. We need to send someone out to check. The young man was silent for a moment and then said, I'll go, but I can't handle it alone. I need another person. The two bald men looked at each other and then at Clementine lying on the ground, and smiled. Take this woman with you. I don't want to go. I don't want to go. There are zombies outside. I don't want to go. Clementine screamed in horror, her voice so shrill that it almost pierced the roof, causing the zombies chained in the yard to become restless. I could tell that the young man, in fact, wanted to save Clementine. Staying in the villa meant certain death for Clementine, but if she went out with the young man, there was a glimmer of hope for her survival. As I expected, when the young man found Silas and came back, Clementine didn't show up. The young man's excuse was that she was already dead. 14. Harrison really had a strong will to live. After using the medicine that Silas brought back, he woke up and his injury recovered quickly. The weather suddenly changed from extremely cold to extremely hot. The temperature soared above 50 degrees Celsius. It was unbearably hot, and it was almost impossible to walk outside. It wasn't much better indoors either. The only good news was that the zombies were not as difficult to deal with as before. The zombies tied up in the yard were exposed to the sun and almost entered a semi-dormant state, not moving at all. Although the water and electricity in the city had been cut off for a long time, the villa had two independent water and electricity supply systems. One was responsible for the above-ground floors of the villa, and the other was for the underground fortress of the villa. So Harrison's team could still live quite comfortably with the air conditioner on every day. They only went out to search for supplies briefly every morning, for a maximum of 2 hours a day, and then they got off work on time. After going through this great disaster, Harrison's ambition to expand his territory had long been extinguished, and he became someone who just wanted to survive. In this way, half a month passed peacefully, and then the villa was surrounded. The people who came were exactly the team that had injured Harrison before. I also saw a familiar figure, Clementine. She really wasn't dead and had become glamorous again. She stepped forward to negotiate with Harrison. Harrison, my boss said that as long as you give up this villa, he'll spare your lives. The villa was impregnable and had an independent water and electricity system. Who wouldn't be jealous of it? Harrison was so angry that the veins on his forehead bulged. You're talking complete nonsense. Then there's no room for negotiation. Clementine laughed coquettishly. Her expression turned cold, and she waved her hand to give orders. Surround them, as the boss said. There were more than a dozen people in this group, and they immediately surrounded the villa tightly, intending to starve the people inside to death. Harrison and the others were furious. They had lived too comfortably in the past dozen days, And there was almost no food left in the villa. They had to go out to find supplies. They endured like this for a few days. Harrison felt that they couldn't just sit and wait for death any longer. Jasper stood up again and proposed to break through the siege at night. They would release the zombies in the yard, use those zombies as a cover, and rush out in the chaos. Zombies attacked indiscriminately, without distinguishing between friend and foe, but they didn't have any other options now. It was an extremely tragic battle. The zombies in the yard hadn't eaten for a long time. Their hunger and ferocity were beyond that of ordinary zombies. The team blocking the outside was caught off guard, and more than half of their members were lost in an instant. The two sides exchanged fire, and the gunshots attracted zombies from several kilometers away. Milo frowned. These idiots. He sent out a drone to check. The image detected by the drone really shocked me. A large number of zombies were rushing towards the villa area frantically. They were so dense that they formed a zombie tide. To be honest, whether in my previous life or this life, I had never seen so many zombies. They were running at an extremely fast speed. In at most 10 minutes, the villa area would be overrun by these zombies. The battle in the villa also reached a fever pitch. There were only 4 people left in the opposing team. Here, the Bald brothers were already dead, and both Harrison and Silas were seriously injured. Clementine and Jasper were hiding in the kitchen. The zombies outside the door were banging on the door, frantically, almost about to break it open. Jasper looked calm. He looked up at the ventilation duct on the ceiling. Step on my shoulders, open the ventilation duct, and climb up, then pull me up. Clementine climbed up while crying. When she reached up to pull Jasper up, the door was broken open by the zombies. Clementine screamed and immediately let go of her hand. Jasper fell down. Jasper was surrounded by zombies, but his expression didn't show the slightest bit of panic. He held a kitchen knife in each hand and chopped at the zombies with all his might, as if cutting watermelons. Clementine was crying loudly in the ventilation duct. Jasper kept chopping and said, "I don't blame you. There were too many zombies to chop." He numbly waved his arms, mechanically repeating the chopping action. He looked up at Clementine, on his face full of blood. There was a naive, boyish smile. "I can finally rest well." The kitchen knife clanged and fell to the ground. The zombies swarmed up and devoured him completely. The ground was shaking, and the zombie tide was surging. The villa area completely fell. 15. Clementine hid in the ventilation duct until daytime. After the sun rose, the zombies outside all entered a semi-dormant state. She crawled out along the ventilation duct. Finally, when she was about to escape, she was shot and killed by Harrison. Harrison was immediately torn apart by the zombies. In the entire villa area, no one survived. Spring passed and autumn came. Above the fortress, zombies were running amok. Below the fortress, Milo and I, with Lulu and Momo, cherished every day and lived a plain and fulfilling life. I learned to dance and successfully got rid of the fat that Milo's delicious cooking had made me gain. Lulu finally stopped destroying things. During this period, he got pancreatitis once. I was so scared that I cried. In the end, Milo cured him. Since then, Lulu has liked to stick to Milo more than me. I found that Milo was like a god. There was nothing he couldn't do, from basic life skills like cooking and repairing to treating people and dogs, shooting, and fighting. He was omnipotent. One day, I was snuggled in his arms watching a movie. In the middle of it, I suddenly asked him, "Are you also reborn?" Milo raised his eyebrows. "Is it that obvious? You just noticed." "I noticed a long time ago." "Okay," I said stubbornly. "So when did you get reborn?" "When you broke up with me." "So early." I jumped up in surprise. "So when I broke up with you, you didn't even try to keep me, because there really wasn't any time. I had to learn all kinds of skills and prepare for the apocalypse." He pulled me back into his arms again and gently kissed me. "You said that if the apocalypse came again, you hoped you could lie back and relax." I was confused. I remembered saying that. It was in my previous life. At that time, my family was out of food and my stomach was growling. Hugging Lulu, I was crying and making a wish, hoping to find a powerful backer and be able to relax. But how did Milo know? I pressed him. "Tell me the truth. Are you hiding something from me?" Milo pondered for a moment. "It's a long story." "Never mind. You can take your time. I have plenty of time." Milo began to tell the story. In the previous life, just like this life, at the beginning of the apocalypse, Clementine wanted to play the game of showing true love in adversity. She secretly ran out to find Milo but encountered Harrison and the others on the way. To save herself, she brought Harrison's group to Milo's villa. Milo became a member of Harrison's team in order to negotiate with them. When the apocalypse came, the person Milo was most worried about was me. Clementine found out about this. Out of jealousy and resentment, she began to instigate Harrison to come to my house to find me, but every time, Milo stopped them. That's why I was able to survive for so long in my previous life. In the previous life, Harrison and the others were also attacked, but he wasn't injured. Milo blocked the bullet on purpose. He used a bitter trick to gain Harrison's trust. Harrison was really touched and regarded Milo as his most trusted person. After Milo was shot and fell into a coma, his soul drifted to my house. Somehow, he switched bodies with my golden retriever, Lulu. In the body of a golden retriever, he accompanied me, helped me find food, and prevented me from starving to death. Later, when his gunshot wound healed, the body switching was no longer stable. Sometimes when he opened his eyes, he found himself in the body of a golden retriever, and sometimes he found himself back in his own body. Just as he was thinking about how to solve this problem, Clementine found a way to send him away and brought Harrison to my house together. She deliberately lured Lulu out with food, alarming the zombies. In the end, I died in the hands of the zombies while trying to save Lulu. At the last moment of my life, Milo's soul switched back to Lulu's body. He tried his best to pull the zombies away, but it was in vain. He watched helplessly as I died in front of him. That's why he said Clementine deserved it. He hated her to the core. 16. After Milo finished speaking, I was crying uncontrollably. So whether in the previous life or this life, my peaceful days were all because he was shouldering the burden for me, because I wanted to relax after being reborn. He learned all kinds of skills and built a solid underground castle for me so that I could relax with peace of mind. Only then did I finally understand how much weight his words, "I love you more than you can imagine," carried. Milo sighed and gently wiped my tears. "I knew you would definitely cry, so I didn't want to tell you." I wailed even louder. He held me helplessly and patted my back gently to comfort me. "It's okay. Cry if you want." Meeting Milo in this life was my good fortune. Year after year, in the 5th year of the apocalypse, the extreme weather gradually returned to normal. The number of zombies was also slowly decreasing. Some zombies fell and never got up again. Gradually, there were signs of humans walking on the streets. It was said that coastal cities had developed a vaccine, and water, electricity, and the internet had been restored. More and more survivors were speaking out on social networks. The whole society was gradually returning to order, and Milo and I, with Lulu and Momo, walked out of the underground castle for the first time. A full 6 years had passed, and they had all grown from puppies to mature and steady dogs. The villa was overgrown with weeds, showing a lush green. A new world was being reborn. Story 2. In order to avoid zombies, I took refuge in a remote prison. The old county sheriff, clutching a machete, looked back at the relentless zombies pursuing him and cried out desperately to me, who was inside the prison walls. He had embezzled public funds and enriched himself for years, and with the apocalypse upon us, he brutally killed unarmed villagers for a bit of food, unaware that I had long since seen through his deeds. I watched coldly and said to him, "Go to hell, old man." 1. I stood on the rooftop, gasping for air, watching the endless stream of zombies emerging from the stairwell behind me, looking up at the dilapidated city below. My eyes filled with relief. Then, I fell forward, ending my 2.5-year flight from the apocalypse. Suddenly, I jolted awake in bed. What the hell? Didn't I just jump off a building? I couldn't believe my surroundings, familiar yet strange. After 2.5 years of fleeing, I had almost forgotten what home looked like. Then I walked into my bedroom, picked up my phone to check the time, and turned to look out the window at the bustling cityscape, trembling. I climbed out of bed, washed my face with cold water in the bathroom, and stared blankly at my youthful face in the mirror. I had returned to 10 days before the zombie outbreak. I gradually calmed down and began to think about how I could avoid the tragedies of my past life. Even a horse stumbles, and people make mistakes. Constant fleeing would inevitably lead to accidents. Building a home for the apocalypse was the far-sighted approach. But where would the money come from? All I had was the living allowance from my parents and an apartment of 120 square meters in the city center, originally intended as my marital home. With the current property price of $40,000 per square meter in the city center, selling the apartment would only net me $8 million. But $8 million was not enough to build an impregnable home for the apocalypse. Asking my parents for money, telling them, "Mom and Dad, the apocalypse is coming in 10 days due to a zombie outbreak. Sell the house and follow me." Knowing my dad, he'd likely scold me fiercely and then have me checked into a psychiatric ward. Forget them. I even thought I was crazy, too. Just then, my phone dinged with a notification. I checked it. World Cup first match. Qatar 0-2 lost to Ecuador. It was the eve of the zombie outbreak during the last World Cup, and tomorrow, a game considered one of the biggest upsets in football history was about to take place. Time was short. I had to act quickly. I contacted the owner of a fully furnished luxury home, my only demand being to sell my apartment for cash by tonight. By evening, I had received over $4-5 million from the sale and checked into the Hilton with just a few pieces of clothing. Having not eaten barbecue in 2.5 years, I decided to go downstairs to gather my thoughts over some skewers. After ordering, sitting at the table, I began to think about where I should build my home for the apocalypse, somewhere isolated, far from the city center. Where could that be? I overheard two guys at the next table talking about the World Cup. "Hey, did you hear? Some guy borrowed money to bet on the games and lost everything in one go, ended up on the rooftop. And not just that, I heard he borrowed a ton of money, several $100,000, just hoping for a big win. No wonder he ended up on the rooftop. If he couldn't pay that back, he'd probably end up in jail. Right, well, not necessarily in jail. Unintentional words that sparked an idea. The word jail made my eyes light up. What place is isolated from the world? That would be a prison, remote and sparsely populated, easy to defend and hard to attack. I wanted to thank that guy and called out, "Thanks, man." Tomorrow, Senegal 0, 2 Netherlands, USA 1, 1 Wales. The two guys turned their heads, surprised. "Really, mate? Are you a betting god or something?" Ignoring them, I opened my phone, bet all 5 million on Argentina versus Saudi Arabia 1-2, with Saudi winning. The guys at the next table stared in disbelief, asking, "How many dishes, mate?" I looked at the untouched table and smiled. "I haven't even started eating yet." 3. The next day, with 8 days left until the zombie outbreak, I spent the night researching and found an abandoned prison in the outskirts of J City, nestled among mountains, sparsely populated, and conveniently located at the junction of 3 provinces, making it ideal for transportation and supplies. It was the perfect prison destined to become my home. I packed a few clothes, bought a train ticket, and set off to inspect my future home, or rather, my future fortress. Upon arriving at the high-speed train station, the first thing I did was head straight to the nearest used car market and rented a van for half a month, convenient for transporting goods and travel. After driving for over half an hour on a bumpy rural road, I arrived at the entrance of this abandoned prison. Despite its remote location, this prison actually belongs to a small county in the suburbs of J City. Finding the gate locked, I drove to the county government office to meet the county head, who was lounging under a space heater. When he saw me at the gate, expressing an interest in the abandoned prison, he quickly got up to greet me, enthusiastically shaking my hand and providing information. The county head insisted on a minimum lease of 5 years for the prison. Eventually, I rented the rights to use the prison for 5 years at the price of $3 million, along with a generous red envelope for the county head, hoping for some conveniences in other areas. After getting the keys from the county head, I entered the long-neglected prison. The prison spans over 400 acres with a perimeter of approximately 64 meters, shaped like a rectangle. The prison buildings were not too old. 2 5-story dormitory buildings were in fairly good condition, though the grounds were overrun with weeds. After a brief tour of the prison, I returned to the county town, checked into a small hotel, and asked the owner for some paper and a pen, planning to sketch out a simple layout for the prison in my room that evening. Just then, my phone pinged with the results of tonight's soccer match between Saudi Arabia and Argentina. Unsurprisingly, Saudi Arabia won 2-1. Online comments exploded, claiming it was one of the biggest upsets in soccer history. The top comment under the video mentioned a fellow diner the night before the match had predicted the scores of the next 2 games and even placed a 4.5 million bet on Saudi winning 2-1. At the time, it seemed like a drunken bet, but now it was clear what had been missed. Soon after, I received a large transaction in my bank account amounting to over 280 million, although I was somewhat prepared. Seeing such a life-changing amount of money in my account still felt surreal, for, with only 7 days until the zombie outbreak, time was running short. The next day at dawn, I contacted several construction crews. With a tight deadline of about 5 days, I had to multitask to ensure the project was completed before the catastrophe. "What? You have other ongoing projects? My deadline is too tight. The location is too remote and inconvenient. My demands are too excessive." Money talks. And I was ready to offer a price you couldn't refuse. For construction convenience, I decided to focus on the interior of the prison first and leave the perimeter work for last. The 2 dormitory buildings were separated only by a narrow path, and I decided to connect them with a mezzanine in the middle, making it appear as if it was originally one building. At first glance, one wouldn't notice the mezzanine hidden between the cells on either side of the buildings. My actual home would be accessed through a secret door in one of the cells, leading to the mezzanine and then down to the basement via a vertical ladder. Most of my supplies would also be stored in the basement. Food was the least of my worries, as the stockpiled and cultivated supplies in and above the basement could sustain my parents and me indefinitely. My concerns were water, electricity, and medical supplies. The south side of the prison buildings, where the terrain was higher and sunlight abundant, was free from obstructions, perfect for setting up a solar panel area. The J City region received ample sunlight, with an average direct radiation of about 1194 kilowatt-hours per square meter, and the inclined radiation wasn't much different at about 1243 kilowatt-hours per square meter. With an average of at least 6 hours of sunlight per day, I wasn't sure how many solar panels to order, but I opted for the better more than less principle. On the phone, the CEO of a tech company assured me while metaphorically patting his chest, a 10,000 square meter solar panel area could accommodate 1,000 kilowatt hours of panels, totaling 200 pieces of 500 watt panels. Each 500 watt panel could generate about 2 kilowatts or 2 kilowatt hours of electricity per day, meaning the solar farm could provide 400 kilowatt hours daily, and the tech company's CEO cheerily stated this setup, including accompanying frames, wires, inverters, batteries, and more, would only cost $20 million, with free installation, testing, and unlimited after-sales service included. I muttered to myself, that's expensive, forget about after-sales, you probably won't be able to make it by then, but free installation is nice. I paused then added, you should also have a 3,000 kilowatt diesel generator, right? I'll take 2 sets of such facilities plus 1 high-capacity imported diesel generator for $45 million. With an extra $1 million for you if you can complete the installation within 3 days. Hearing this, the owner's jaw dropped, and he stopped calling me sir, instead saying, brother, don't worry, give me 2 days and I'll have everything sorted out clearly. 5. On the 4th day, with only 6 days left until the zombie outbreak, the issue of electricity had been temporarily resolved. Normally, 1 set of solar panels would generate power, then a backup generator was prepared in case of damage so it could be replaced easily, even without sunlight. The diesel generator could be used for emergency power supply. However, the high-power diesel generator posed a problem. Though it produced an impressive amount of electricity, it also consumed a significant amount of diesel, up to 1,000 liters an hour, which was all a person could purchase. I immediately drove to the entrance of the county committee's courtyard and found the county mayor upon getting out of the car. Upon seeing me, the county mayor stood up with a smile, saying enthusiastically, Yen boss, I've been thinking about you these past few days. I thought to myself, he's probably worried about the payment, but kept a straight face and replied, brother, wasn't it just the day before yesterday that we met? It feels like a long time since yesterday. Today, brother, I'm here to pay the rent. Hearing that I came to pay, the mayor's smile deepened as he said, oh, brother, talking about money diminishes our relationship. While saying this, he handed me a slip of paper with a bank account number on it from his desk. I could tell it was the mayor's personal account. With a twitch of my lips and without much conversation, since it's tough to fight local snakes, I understood that this kind of person was just after money. I transferred the funds. After the transfer, I smiled and said, brother, I need a favor. In the next few days, I'll have a shipment of supplies and a construction team arriving, and I've ordered a diesel generator which will need a lot of diesel. Can you help me out with this? The mayor looked troubled and hesitated. Little brother, this is, seeing he didn't outright refuse but hesitated, I immediately knew what this cunning fox was thinking. I coldly chuckled internally and said, brother, rest assured, since I'm asking for your help, I wouldn't let you lose out. Let's do this. I'll buy diesel from you at 10,000 yuan per ton as a gift for our meeting. The mayor's eyes flickered with covert delight, though he still looked somewhat troubled, finally whispering, since we hit it off so well, and since you've asked, I can't refuse to help. Consider it done, and wait for my good news. We then exchanged several compliments. Suddenly, I remembered that my fish ponds were still waterless. So I mentioned to the mayor, brother, I have 2 fish ponds that need water. I plan to draw water from the nearby river. That should be okay, right? Seeing that it didn't require his labor, the mayor was happy to do me this favor. With a grand gesture, he said, brother, are you underestimating me? Go ahead and draw the water. I've got your back. No one will object. Then, the mayor, chatting with me, sensed something was amiss and asked what I was planning with both the fish ponds and the generator. I decided to teach this greedy fox a lesson. With renewed vigor, I lowered my voice and said, brother, I'm planning to start a rural retreat right here, especially since the pandemic is hitting hard. You know, I haven't shared this because many places aren't accessible or convenient for others. Brother, don't look into things you shouldn't. Don't ask about things you shouldn't. Too much knowledge might be problematic for you. The mayor paused, looking serious and confused. A rural retreat, who would invest millions to start one in the wilderness? Could it be? Seeming to suddenly realize something, he covered his mouth and tentatively pointed upwards. Is it from higher up? I glanced at him and nodded slightly, indicating higher up, realizing his guess was correct. The mayor was visibly shocked and stammered. Then, this, seeing his reaction, I internally sneered. I was afraid you might not live to spend it. Outwardly calm, I reassured, brother, don't worry, just keep the money, no one will say anything. Afterwards, the mayor escorted me out, unable to hide his emotions, repeatedly saying, brother, remember to put in a good word for me. I waved him off. Enough, no need to see me out, best not to be seen, I'm off. 6. Considering safety factors. All construction units came from other areas to avoid any potential backlash in case of a zombie outbreak. In the afternoon, the construction teams arrived one after another. I gave each worker from the various units a red envelope containing 10,000 yuan to boost their morale, promising that the quicker the completion, the larger the bonus. Although construction teams usually secretly drill wells to cool their equipment, I still approached their leaders and gave them 50,000 yuan. Instruct them to drill 2 additional wells, one in the middle of the fish pond to the north and another on the east side of the prison tower. My plan for the basement spans 4 levels, all equipped with moisture-proof, waterproof, and even earthquake-resistant rooms, including a ventilation system, all handled by a professional construction team. The first level has relatively good ventilation, and I plan to use it for living quarters, designated for myself, my parents, my sister. And it includes 3 bathrooms. The water in the bathrooms is sourced from groundwater, while the water for bathing is connected to the solar water heaters on the roof. To save energy, the water heaters will not be on all day, they will be turned on in advance when needed. Wastewater will be lifted into the main sewage pipeline to the ground septic tank, which can be reused for watering and fertilizing vegetation and vegetables. The second level will be used entirely for storage, including a large amount of daily necessities, clothes for every season, fire extinguishers for emergencies, enough napkins and toilet paper to last us decades, and several sets of dishes and cooking utensils. The owners of the daily goods and home appliance factories treated me like a cash cow, selling me all sorts of everyday items, whether I needed them or not. Overstocking is better than understocking. It didn't cost much anyway, and I couldn't be bothered to argue. So everything was stored in the warehouse upon arrival. I also bought some skincare products for my sister as recommended on Little Red Sweet Potato, like Helena and SK2, just a symbolic amount, enough until they expire. Skincare products can expire if bought in excess. Afterwards, planting some aloe will do just as well. I didn't buy any makeup, after all, aside from us, zombies wouldn't appreciate it. The third level has been constructed with 3 cold storage rooms, where all perishables are stored in freezers. Usually just the first cold storage room is in operation. It stores large quantities of fresh and frozen meats like lamb, beef, and pork, which the prison does not breed, and even a lot of popsicles and ice cream. The other 3 rooms store a large number of spare photovoltaic panels and various replaceable electronic components. Another room serves as the control center, monitoring all of the prison's surveillance equipment. This is where most of the prison's electricity is used, but fortunately, we don't have many other places that need electricity. I believe we will live quite comfortably in the first year, even enjoying fresh meat and ice cream. The 4th level is used to store a batch of diesel from the old county mayor, and due to the volatile nature of diesel, I specifically placed it on the 4th underground level. It's worth mentioning that because of the profitable price difference and the mayor wanting to please me, he managed to get a lot, but I never expected this old thing could manage to get 100 tons of diesel, totaling 588 barrels. The thought of so many barrels stored below is somewhat frightening. Therefore, to avoid fire hazards, I deliberately did not place the kitchen underground, but instead, in the southwest corner of the prison, in the dining room. The stove was also specially prepared with both electric and wood-burning options, generally using wood for cooking large pots, and switching to electric when there is a surplus of power. Of course, living underground for a long time is not beneficial for one's physical and mental health. The roof has good lighting, and I have transformed part of the ceiling into frosted skylights. Several cells have been converted into 2 bedrooms, with the difference being that the bedroom doors open towards the inside of the mezzanine. Also, to better sustain long-term survival, entertainment is quite important. I built a separate small building in the northeast corner of the prison building, equipped with a pool table, mahjong table, and television, specifically for our family's daytime entertainment and rest. I have saved many TV shows, variety shows, and movies on USB drives, like Bright Sword, The Legend of the Condor Heroes, Heroes of Sui and Tang dynasties, which my parents love to watch. I also organized 1 terabyte of learning materials for myself, believing in lifelong learning, as a man remains youthful until his death. To avoid disturbing my parents' rest, I converted one of the prison cells on the other side into an entertainment room and ordered several PS5 Switch consoles, top-end computer peripherals, and a large number of single-player game resource cards and discs, such as Give Him Love 5, Tears of the Kingdom, Kirby of the Stars, and others. Believe me, by the time I complete all these games, my life will probably be nearing its own game over. I can't help but look forward to the days after the apocalypse, free from urban noise, 996 work schedules, KPIs, car loans, housing mortgages, and without a wife. Oh, I didn't have these before the apocalypse either, so no worries there. The east side of the prison building is a planting area, growing common crops such as eggplants, potatoes, radishes, rice, and sweet potatoes. I've ordered a large batch of vegetable and fruit seeds for all seasons. If stored properly, we can enjoy seasonal fruits every year without needing to plant too much, just enough for the four of us to eat. Of course, I wouldn't know how to manage these things without proper planning, but I've made sure everything is set for our long-term survival. My mother, as a contemporary independent woman from the countryside, has always found farm work to be second nature, having grown up with it. In recent days, I've been constantly on the lookout for information from the outside world, and one day, a viral online incident about a rabies attack caught my attention. In the video, a man was seen furiously biting a woman, and despite the efforts of bystanders pulling and kicking, they couldn't separate them until the police arrived and subdued the man with a stun gun. The man fell to the ground convulsing. And although the woman's face was blurred in the video, it was clear from the footage that her neck was severely mutilated. Shortly after, the woman was taken away in an ambulance, and the man was handcuffed by the police. 5 minutes later, the video was taken down, and no related news could be found through search keywords. I know a lesser-known fact: humans infected with rabies do not exhibit symptoms of attacking others. The urgency of constructing the base is pressing, and I'm hesitant about whether to call my parents and sister over sooner. I spent a sleepless night and sent another payment urging the construction crew to speed up the work. After the apocalypse, the best pastime I could think of was fishing, which I rank as the second most engaging activity, and no one dares claim the first. The north side of the ground-level prison building was primarily intended for a fish pond, firstly as a main source of protein, and secondly because both my dad and I love fishing. I transformed the activity area on the north side of the prison into 2 fish ponds, each covering about 10 acres and 2 meters deep, separating freshwater fish from aggressive carnivorous fish, one pond for rod fishing and the other for lure fishing enthusiasts. For this, I specifically called my father for some expert advice over the phone. My father suggested planting gramineous plants around the shores and aquatic plants and duckweed in the water to promote the growth of microorganisms and plankton. The fish stocks would be managed by breeding grass carp, which could feed on duckweed, aquatic plants, and plankton, and their feces, in turn, would serve as high-quality bait for silver carp and bighead carp. The upper layer fish, silver carp, and bighead carp, would grow by consuming the grass carp's feces and the remaining plankton. The bottom layer would involve breeding carp and crucian carp, which would feed on the residual feces and leftover food from the upper layer fish. This setup creates a natural cycle, maximizing the use of bait and purifying the water, achieving optimal benefits. Good water quality is essential for sustaining fish, and considering the size of the pond, I also plan to order 100 pounds of snails to help purify the water on the water surface. I decided to add an additional 20 insect-attracting lights, averaging 1 per acre. These lights consume little power and come with small solar panels for daytime charging and nighttime operation. Additionally, I purchased 6 bottom-mounted micropore aerators, but given the fish density, short-term oxygen depletion was not a concern. I bought them just as a precaution. When my father asked why I needed this information, I casually brushed it off, saying, "A friend is thinking of starting an agritourism venture and needed some advice." My father didn't press further, and after exchanging a few pleasantries, I ended the call. The construction crew worked around the clock, driven by sufficient funding. The old prison's cafeteria and other unnecessary structures were demolished. Critical cells and iron bars were all reinforced and renovated, and all moldy walls were repainted. During this time, I also contacted the former county chief to request some medicines for the agritourism venture. The next day, he delivered various common household medicines. Although it wasn't much, it was enough for our short-term needs, as medicines also have expiration dates. In addition to the medicines, the county chief also brought me a dozen local chickens and ducks, claiming they were genuine and would definitely be useful for my agritourism venture, though I wasn't sure if they were from his own farm. Seeing the many workers and piles of materials being transported into my prison facility, the county chief seemed even more convinced and didn't ask for payment, simply handing over the goods and leaving. I had planned to collect some goods from the village later, but this saved me the trouble. The local chickens and ducks were mostly free-range, requiring just some vegetable leaves for feeding. I placed the chickens and ducks in a fenced area on the east side of the prison building, planning to slaughter a few each evening to provide additional meals for the workers at the construction site. 2 days passed, and there were only 4 days left until the zombie outbreak. The solar and diesel power stations to the south were fully installed, and spare photovoltaic panels and other electrical components were stored in the underground level 3 storage room. Various supplies had also arrived, including the requested fish fry. True to the saying, broad waters raise large fish, I ensured the water had sufficient oxygen content and didn't order too many fish. The rod fishing pond received 3,000 grass carp, 500 silver and bighead carp, and 1,000 carp and crucian carp. The lure fishing pond also had a modest stock of 2,000 snakehead and bass. In addition to fish fry, the 2 fish ponds were also stocked with many mature fish. As it takes a year or two for the fry to grow, the perimeter walls and wire mesh were reinforced and inspected again. With surveillance cameras installed every 50 meters, and the entire wire mesh was electrified, I kept a close eye on my phone, monitoring the information on it intensively these past few days. Yesterday, a video went viral online with the caption, "Hallucinating addicts on the streets of New York walking like zombies." Another video, posted by a netizen, was terrifyingly scary. It showed my older brother, who had been feeling cold since the day before yesterday, writhing, twitching, and rolling crazily in bed today. Eventually, he lunged at the person filming the video while bent over. The camera then spun around on the ground, and finally, it was picked up by his younger brother, who ran outside, continuously shouting "brother." In the violently shaking final footage, you could vaguely see the older brother, drooling and roaring as he chased after his younger brother. Rumors began to spread online that the virus strain of the pandemic was mutating, with the new strain showing increased rates of infection, mortality, and severity of symptoms. The basement construction was nearing completion. I checked the electricity, ventilation, groundwater, and all surveillance equipment once more, and everything was running smoothly. I was always worried about potential accidents with the construction, but fortunately, we hired a professional top-tier team and paid them well, excluding the initial deposit. A total of $31 million was paid for the remaining construction costs, which was far above the normal rate. However, everything needed to be expedited, and although it was an unavoidable expense, it was worth every penny. After several days of tension, I finally took a deep breath. The batch of 80,000 cubic meters of 50 millimeters thick steel plates that I had ordered for $48 million also arrived. It seemed about time. I couldn't wait any longer, and we could proceed with the rest once my parents and sister arrived. I worried that the timing of the zombie outbreak might differ from the last time. I sent a message to my sister, "Are you there?" 10 minutes later, my sister replied with just one word, "Sure." Speechless, I could only reply, "There's a new farm stay opening. Will you come?" 20 minutes passed without a reply from her, and I realized what was happening. I sent her another message, "I bought you a bag." I paused, then added, "A Louis Vuitton." Then I saw she was typing. A second later, my sister sent just 2 words, "Location." Speechless, I sent her the location. My sister warned me that if I dared to deceive her, I would be in big trouble. Tricking our parents was much easier, but since they rarely checked WeChat, I had to call them. I told them about a friend's farm stay opening, thanking us with an invitation. I mentioned that my sister would also be there, and spent a good 5 minutes describing the farm stay's fish ponds and free-range chickens and ducks. Subsequently, my parents said they would arrive tomorrow. On the 7th day, with only 3 days left before the zombie outbreak, my sister arrived first, and I went out to greet her. As soon as she saw me, she said, "You little rascal, where's my bag? If you dared to trick me, you'd be dead. Is this a farm stay or a prison?" I replied, "It's a farm stay converted from a prison. Your bag is in the room, all prepared in advance." In the afternoon, our parents also arrived. My dad asked me, "Chenzi, where's your friend?" I casually replied, "Oh, he just went out to check some goods, and there's still some stuff he hasn't bought. He said we should just wander around and enjoy ourselves." My parents didn't think much of it, finding it a bit strange, but went to check out the fish ponds and the poultry. Seeing that my parents had arrived, I quickly contacted the construction team to start working on the perimeter. I had planned 3 trenches for the outer defense. The first trench, right against the wall, would have 2 layers of 20-meter-wide steel plates buried under it, then refilled with soil. Between the 2 layers of steel plates, there was a theft prevention wire mesh connected to an electrical wire which would trigger an alarm if touched. The second and third trenches, each 10 meters deep and 10 meters wide, spaced 10 meters apart, with the third trench filled with water and connected to an electric cable. These would only be electrified if the wall and the second trench were breached, serving as my last line of defense. On the 8th day, with just 2 days left until the zombie outbreak, my parents had hardly slept all night, and after a day of observing and looking at the 2 long trenches, each 2,000 meters long and 10 meters deep, they were exhausted. If this was supposed to be a rural retreat, it would be laughable. It's clearly a transformed prison. At night, we sleep in cells just like inmates. My sister was still reveling in the joy of a supposed cure-all, and our parents couldn't hold back their questions about what was really going on. I knew I couldn't hide it anymore. I had no choice but to take them to my basement and tell them everything that had happened in my previous life and before. When my father heard how his unfilial son had sold his marital home, he was ready to display a grand act of fatherly love. However, when I showed him the remaining 100 million plus on my phone, it barely stopped his overwhelming paternal affection. At this point, my sister chimed in, although I can't quite accept it. Guessing the outcome of Saudi Arabia versus Argentina without prior knowledge would indeed be hard. Then, my mother helped me by saying, "Don't you know your own son? He might seem frivolous, but has he ever let us down at crucial times?" Besides, even though he has spent over 100 million, there's still a lot left. Even if there's no zombie outbreak, I think this place is quite nice for retirement. My father thought it over and agreed that, even if zombies didn't appear this time, the place was still good for retirement. Besides, the 2 fish ponds were really well made and could potentially bring in a good income later on. After hearing my account, my father was a bit uneasy. We walked around the prison to see if there were any oversights. As the construction crew was about to leave, I couldn't rest easy. I stopped them and handed them 100,000 yuan to dig a 10-meter deep trench around the prison walls. Watching the busy crew, I felt a pang of guilt but was unsure what else to do. I gave each worker a 10,000 yuan bonus, casually mentioning, "You've all made enough money this year. It's time to go home and spend time with your wives and kids. Or your parents if you're single. With a severe epidemic outside, it's good to have some extra cash to stock up on food and drinks at home. You've all worked hard these past few days." The workers were grateful, but I felt a heavy weight in my heart, as if something was pressing down on me. I just hoped that as many of us as possible could survive. These people are the pillars of their families, sons to their parents, and fathers and husbands to their children and wives. On the 9th day, there was still 1 day left until the zombie outbreak. I barely slept last night, glued to my phone for a long time. A news update about a mall attack, which was 6th on Facebook's trending list, caught my attention. It wasn't particularly noticeable among the usual news and celebrity gossip, but I knew the zombie virus had truly broken out early. Thankfully, I had rushed the transformation of the entire prison at no matter the cost, completing it within a week. My sister noticed too, but we didn't tell our parents. However, by noon they had found out anyway. After seeing a video in their community property group of a man biting a security guard on the ground, they realized that everything their son had said was happening. I had warned my parents that if they didn't want my sister and me to die, they must never share our location with anyone. My prison, located remotely, was barely touched by the sparse zombies, and my defenses were obviously aimed more at living humans. 2 hours later, the trending keywords on Facebook were all about the zombie virus, lockdowns, and epidemics. Scattered videos from abroad also came in, showcasing people scuffling on the famous Shibuya streets in Tokyo and car alarms blaring in the background, as if a devil's tango or a requiem from hell were playing. Sensing an impending storm, I turned off my phone but felt surprisingly calm. My prison had just received its first uninvited guest. I was in the surveillance room when a shaky figure on one of the monitors caught my eye. The spread of the zombies was faster than I had imagined. Attracted by my mother, who was sowing seeds inside the walls, a zombie ran towards her, howling. 10 seconds later, with a thud, the zombie fell into the 10-meter deep pit. This confirmed that my prison was likely secure against zombies. 10 days later, something happened, and the internet went down, turning my phone into just a clock. We were cut off from outside information, but fortunately, I had an old radio that could receive signals, though it wasn't very reliable, possibly due to being in the deep mountains. A month had passed since the initial outbreak of zombies. Apart from the occasional zombie falling into a pit, our family of 4 lived a life reminiscent of a hidden paradise. We farmed, fished, raised chickens, and worked from sunrise. We relaxed with TV, video games, billiards, and mahjong from sunset. Although the electric fence was equipped with an alarm system, we still arranged shifts to keep watch at night. This routine was disrupted one day when my sister, finding me playing games in my cell, told me someone outside the walls was calling for me. At the wall, I found both my parents already there, and to my surprise, outside stood the old county mayor with a bag on his back and his hand bandaged. I was utterly shocked. That old man was still alive. It had been almost 3 months. And aside from looking a bit weary, he even seemed chubbier. Was he doing well? He seemed to have gained weight. Every so often, the old mayor glanced nervously behind him, as if something was chasing him. He anxiously called out, "Please, let your older brother in quickly." My parents and sister turned to look at me with a strange expression. I shrugged and briefly explained my past dealings with the old mayor to them. Upon hearing this, my father grew furious, immediately condemning such a parasite of the nation, questioning whether we should save him only for him to continue harming society. My grandfather had survived the counterattack war against Vietnam, and my father was born while he was still enlisted. Influenced by my grandfather, my father later served on the Yunnan border for 5 years, only returning to carry on the family lineage. Both my father and grandfather had dedicated their lives to protecting the country and held deep contempt for those who threatened it, but my concern was different. That old man had survived over 3 months before being forced to flee. Where had he gotten food for all these months? I looked at the hatchet in the old mayor's right hand, noticing the dried dark red stains on it, and at the figures chasing him from behind. Having lived through a past life, I knew zombie blood was blackish red. The blood on that hatchet, whose was it? The answer was almost obvious. I clenched my fists, glaring at the old mare, nearly grinding my teeth to bits, muttering, "This bastard." The old mare, seeing the figures closing in, cursed loudly, "These useless fools are still chasing me. I'll crush you to dust." With gritted teeth, he strapped the hatchet to his waist, grabbed a log from the ground, and backed up a few steps before attempting a pole vault across the ditch. He barely grabbed the edge of the ditch on the other side, and as he sighed in relief thinking he had survived, suddenly a villager leaped down and grabbed his legs. The old mare kicked frantically, screaming, "You lowlife, let go of me." Struggling and gradually losing strength, he looked at me in horror, pleading for help. I watched him motionlessly and said, "Go to hell, you dog." With a shriek, the old mare fell backward, and one by one, villagers pounced on him from above. The heart-wrenching screams didn't last long before they quieted down. I wasn't worried about the zombies in the ditch causing any trouble, like in some world war of zombies climbing out. My ditch was deep enough. The zombies would lose their target and wander aimlessly until they starved. This little incident was soon forgotten by us, perhaps because of our remote location. We didn't face massive hordes of zombies. At most, 100 scattered ones approached. With weaker ultraviolet rays in winter, electricity was occasionally sparse. Fortunately, the diesel the old mare brought was plentiful, allowing us to conserve electricity and primarily use solar power, occasionally supplemented by diesel generators to get through the winter. The basement was naturally cool in summer and warm in winter, to save power. We didn't use the heater and moved into the basement, as winter turned to spring. Spring arrived quietly while we occasionally sat around the table, enjoying lamb hot pot and grilled skewers. I put down my game console and watched my father cursing as he walked into the kitchen, continually talking about the big blackfish that had slipped the hook, vowing to catch it tomorrow to make pickled fish for us. We now had fresh farm eggs every morning. My mother happily tended her vegetable garden and the now sizable flock of chickens and ducks during the day. At night, she would cry, lamenting, "I'd rather embrace the fragrance and die on the branch than be blown down by the north wind. Oh, it's not worth it, sister." As for my sister, she used the new LV bag I bought her to store plenty of aloe vera stems, in preparation for when her skincare products ran out. She had already started studying how to make her aloe vera masks. We had been cut off from the outside world for 6 months. The radio increasingly received fewer signals, and those we did get were intermittent and unclear. Time has slipped through our fingers, and more than a year has passed. During this period, there have been occasional visits by the living, but due to the remote location of the prison, such instances have been rare. Some of those who came had a fierce look in their eyes, but when they saw the 3 deep moats surrounding the area, as well as the wandering zombies in the ditches and the towering walls topped with barbed wire, they reluctantly left. They preferred to try their luck elsewhere rather than risking their lives on such a tough challenge. There were families as well as individuals who came alone, but I too was trapped by my own moats and couldn't get out. All I could do was throw out some food like ham sausages and instant noodles, which I couldn't finish anyway. Rather than letting them expire in the warehouse, I'd rather give them away, hoping that they could last a little longer. At least longer than I did in my previous life. Perhaps the dawn is just delayed. I asked them if they had any news from the outside world, how things were out there, but they too seemed to have lost contact with the outside world for a long time, and I didn't get much useful information. As the second year arrived, encounters with people became even rarer. In total, I met no more than 5 living people that year. There seemed to be an abundance of zombies wandering over from the neighboring areas, falling into the pits outside, one after another. Occasionally, I would remotely control a drone to check the outside world. However, the drone's signal and battery life could only reach the national highway in the county at most. It couldn't return if it went any further. I once tried sacrificing a drone to look further afield, but without exception, all there was to see were ruins and corpses everywhere, with occasional zombies gnawing at the bodies. I lied to my family, claiming to have seen the army in combat, but the drone fell due to battery failure, and then the soldiers were no longer visible. My mother said, "That's a good sign. It means the army is still there, and the country hasn't given up on the people who might still be alive." My father said irritably, "Isn't that obvious? When has our country ever abandoned anyone? What we need to do is to survive well and hold on until the day of the people's victory." My sister just looked at me and said nothing, comforting our parents that we had enough supplies to last a long time, hopefully until the nation's rescue arrives. My hair has grown longer, and if it weren't tied back, it would cover my face. I made a mistake. I bought everything but forgot to buy a hair clipper. My father and I had to let my mother clumsily trim our hair with scissors. As my mother says, "Isn't cutting hair just like pruning crops and trees?" My sister managed to make an aloe vera mask, but without sunscreen, her skin turned from pale to wheat-colored over 2 years. But she was happy because she had plenty of time to exercise daily, and she managed to lose the weight she hadn't before the apocalypse. Seeing my family living happily, I too smiled. Whether the dawn arrives or not, we are our own dawn, shining light and warmth on the path beneath our feet. The road might be a bit muddy, but our steps forward are firm and strong. the pages of the calendar have turned, one after another, and we no longer use our phones. Time has lost its meaning to us. June 12th. Today is the second time I've turned to this page in the calendar. It's been 3 years since the zombie outbreak began. Unexpectedly, dawn finally arrived on the third year. That day, 3 fully armed strangers appeared at the gates of our prison, each holding a Type 95 assault rifle. In my previous life of 2.5 years on the run, hadn't I seen people with weapons knocking on doors in apartment buildings, and those who trustingly opened their doors never came out again? One must not harbor ill intentions, but it is necessary to guard against others. Unsure of the true identities of these 3, I quickly told my parents to stay down and not show themselves. I asked the 3 what they were doing and why there were only 3 of them. They replied they were out searching for survivors, and the roads were blocked with the wreckage of cars that hadn't been cleared yet, making it impossible for vehicles to get through. Recalling the state of the roads outside, it was indeed as they said. My father and I exchanged glances, stating that we too couldn't get out, and we were just managing to get by with our food supplies. Let them first check if there are any other survivors. We can be ignored for now. The 3 are uncertain whether they genuinely can't enter or indeed see that we pose no threat. It's unclear if it was just an act, but after speaking into the walkie-talkie, they turned and left. After their departure, we held a discussion. My father and I agreed that caution is the best approach, especially since we've been out of touch with the outside world for 3 years and are unsure of the true origins of these 3 individuals. My mother suggested that perhaps things are as they said outside, that a vaccine has been developed. Although those who have died cannot be brought back, those who are still alive might gain immunity and no longer need to fear mutations. My sister remained neutral, making it 2 against 1. Ultimately, I proposed that we first take some supplies and hide in the basement, moving all the furniture from our cell-like rooms into the mezzanine to avoid detection of the secret door. Using the surveillance room, we observed the outside situation. If they truly were from a search and rescue organization, that would be ideal. If they were hostiles, they likely wouldn't be able to find us or get in. Eventually, my proposal was approved. Our family moved into the basement. A week passed with complete silence outside, and I thought everything was over. Suddenly, the calm of the week was shattered by the surveillance footage showing fully armed individuals moving inside our prison. Damn it, how did they silently get into the prison? They searched briefly, approaching our dormitory building. I wasn't sure if they could discover the mezzanine between the 2 dorms. I quickly alerted my family. My mother and sister hid in their room, while my father and I hid on either side of the basement entrance. I prayed they wouldn't find our hiding spot, but I grew worried that if they didn't leave, our food supply below would eventually run out, and we would inevitably be discovered. Footsteps gradually approached. My father and I exchanged a tense look, gripping our sticks tightly. The basement door creaked open. My father and I swung our sticks at the first person who entered. The person fell to the ground in pain, and others rushed in behind him. I was quickly subdued, with multiple attackers against him and his age. My father was firmly pinned down by 3 people. Seeing this, my mother and sister, who rushed over, were tightly grabbed by one person with both hands. Then the last person to enter shouted, "Calm down, we're here to rescue you." He also yelled at the 5 who had entered first, "Hurry up and let them go. And you, boy, I told you, sweat more in peacetime, bleed less in wartime. You almost got knocked down coming up here." The person who had pinned me down stood upright, holding his nose, not daring to speak. It was then we truly saw the faces of our rescuers. Our emotions collapsed, and unable to hold back, my mother and sister clung to each other crying. Tears also welled up in my eyes. 3 years, 3 years, finally, victory. Once we got outside, we saw a helicopter hovering in the sky. That's when I realized how these people had gotten in. 3 years later, I sat at the reception desk scrolling through Facebook. The top trending topic read, 6th anniversary of the zombie outbreak, online. Some had lost their lovers, others their fathers, some were all alone. Everyone was reminiscing about their loved ones and expressing their unending longing. My father entered laughing, carrying a blackfish. Haha, today's menu includes sauerkraut fish. My mother was busy in the kitchen. Hearing my father come in, she shouted loudly, "Hurry and come help me, I'm swamped." Father, carrying the fish, ran into the kitchen laughing. Haha, coming. After the disaster, we returned to this prison. I donated $50 million for the reconstruction of the surrounding towns and counties. Over 3 years, the nearby towns gradually recovered. We kept the dormitory buildings of the prison as the main facilities, transformed the cells into themed guest rooms, and added other projects, truly starting a farm-stay business. These years, people online preferred not to go to big cities but liked visiting niche places, using the experience of prison life as a gimmick. My sister created a themed prison-style farm stay that attracted guests online, specifically handling family gatherings or large company team buildings and charging for fishing spots. The business was doing quite well. I inquired about the construction crews from before, and perhaps thanks to my warning, many had survived. Listening to the scolding from the kitchen and my father's hearty laughter, scrolling through my phone, I felt the positive attitude towards life shared by everyone online. Life is truly wonderful.